You can actually wake up the house. So we'll try and sort my audio as it goes to the audience that is joining me virtually right now. But for now, let me talk a little bit about Tax India Online. I'm sure my audience is already aware that over the last 21 years, Tax India Online has managed to emerge as a leader in the online resource space, bridging the much needed communication gap between policy making, policy interpretation, and policy implementation by disseminating business critical information, analysis, expert views, and a whole lot more on fiscal, monetary, and foreign trade space. And today's awards, the National Taxation Awards, is our endeavor to recognize, acknowledge, and of course, celebrate compliant taxpayers. And while we do so, hopefully motivate others to do the same. As I just mentioned, that we are extremely honored that in audience we have many distinguished guests, but not just that. Due to paucity posed by this pandemic, a whole lot of distinguished personalities from diverse fields will be joining us throughout the day through virtual links, as you can already see. I would also like to share with you that we were really looking forward to have with us Honorable Justice Vineet Saran of Supreme Court of India join as the chief guest for the awards, but he will not be able to make it due to a family exigency, we are told. But he sends his best wishes. And with that, we would like to move forward and give a befitting start to this morning with the auspicious lamp lighting ceremony. Before I introduce my guests on the ground who are physically present with me right now, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to the very special guests who are joining me virtually from across the country, starting with, of course, our guest of honor, Mr. N.K. Singh, Chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission. We also have with us mentor to jury, former Chief Justice of India, Justice R.C. Lahoti, present with us virtually right now. We also have Vice Chairman of the jury panel, Mr. Sumit Bose, former Revenue Secretary, who's part of the virtual members joining us right now. Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director, Business Standard Newspaper, who's also contributed to the jury, and also Dr. Girish Ahuja, CA and author, and a member of DTC Task Force, and also a jury member. A big round of applause for our virtual guests, please. So these guests are with us in this lamp lighting, and to do the honors physically on the ground, I would like to request our special guests who have made it to this event physically, starting with Mr. A.N. Jha, former Finance Secretary and member of 15th Finance Commission. So we welcome you to please do the honors. Along with him, I would like to invite Mr. G.C. Srivastava, former Director General of International Taxation, CBDT, Ministry of Finance. We also have with us Ms. Praveen Mahajan, former Chairperson, Central Board of Excise and Customs, Ministry of Finance. Thank you so much, ma'am, for making time for this. And Mr. M.C. Joshi, former Chairman, Central Board of Direct Taxes, Ministry of Finance. We're very honored to have these guests with us here, and the guests who are joining us virtually. Along with them, I would also like to request Mr. Shailendra Kumar, CEO and founder editor of TIOL, and Mr. R. Sridhar, TIOL Award Committee Coordinator, to please join them for lamp lighting ceremony. Can we have all the guests towards the lamp, please? I request my hostess to be ready with the felicitation that we will be doing for our physical guests just after this. I request my guest to please grace the dais. If I can have the hostess for a quick felicitation here. Come. So that's just a small token for you. So should you feel, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, now that we have our guests seated on the dais, let's move on with the proceedings of the show with a very special message, which has come to us from none other than the Honorable Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman. So she couldn't make it to the event. We understand that she's busy in Mumbai with some very important meetings today, but she sent this message for us. Thank you for playing that out. And now I request Mr. Shailendra Kumar, trustee of TIOL Knowledge Foundation and the man behind the vision of TIOL, to welcome our august guests. Mr. Shailendra Kumar.
A very pleasant good morning to all. And before I welcome distinguished guests, I must extend my thanks to the Honorable Finance Minister who could not make it today. She's in Mumbai, but she has served with lots of blessings for us and TIOL Awards. And let me thank her and thank you, ma'am, and belated birthday also. She recently had the birthday. So a very warm welcome to the Honorable Chief Guest, Justice Saran. Unfortunately, he is not with us today because of some late evening developments bordering some family exigencies. But his generous wishes are with us. We had several interactions with him, and he was all praise and big motivator for us how to proceed for the next year, etc. Lots of ideas we got from him. Thank you, sir. We are going to miss you. And let me thank Mr. N.K. Singh, the guest of honor, our very special guest, Mr. N. Jha, former Finance Secretary, member of 15th Finance Commission, Mr. J.C. Srivastava, former Director General, International Taxation, and of course, honorable jury, we have Justice Lahoti, Mr. Sumit Bose. I think he had a appointment with the doctor. Probably he will be joining after some time. Thank you, sir. I mean, you showed tremendous amount of patience with these technical glitches, and we will welcome you back after some time. Mr. Bhattacharya is with us. Mr. Girish Ahuja is with us. Madam Praveen Mahajan and Mr. Joshi, the honorable jury members are with us. Thank you, sir. It's really wonderful to have you. Both the chairmen, I must thank and welcome them, although they are physically not here. They had promised that virtually probably they will try, but I guess this meeting is proceeding in Mumbai, so they will not be able to connect. So Mr. Ajit Kumar, Chairman, CBIC, and Mr. Mahapatra, both of them, thank you, sir, and wonderful videos they have shared. We will play it today. And then, of course, Mr. Bhatnagar was supposed to be here, member customs, and I think he is still trying. He's somewhere, probably at the tip of the India's shoes, somewhere in Trivandrum. So probably he is still trying. So we may connect with him. And thank you, sir. At least your wishes are there, and your attempt to connect with TIOL and audiences, and your good wishes for all of us. And of course, I must thank all my juries here and everybody present here. I also must thank Mr. Sanjeev Kausal, Additional Chief Secretary Haryana, who has just joined us remotely. Mr. Ramesh Abhishek, former Secretary Industry, who has also joined us, and Mr. V. Sridhar, former Chairman CBEC, who has also joined us from Chennai, and of course Mr. A.K. Pandey, the former Director General DRI, who has joined us from somewhere in France. Sorry, sir, I am keeping you awake. He has also joined us remotely. He just informed me that he's waiting for the link. So nice of you, sir. I'm just blessings for all of us that you are awake. Dr. Anup Sharup, Vice Chancellor, Jagran University and Global Knowledge Alliance from Sydney. He is also awake. He is with us remotely. So thank you, Mr. Shrup. And my 88-year-old professor of journalism from Indian Institute of Mass Communication, Professor Dua from California, he is also awake. So he is also with us, in fact. So much of blessings for TIOL Awards and all of us, the people who are who have been waiting for this event and they're with us today. I must thank my mentors, Mr. Naresh Minocha, Mr. Usha Rai, Mr. Dipishan Gupta, Mr. Sumit Dutt Majumdar, Mr. R.K. Chakravarti, who is Mr. T.R. Rustagi, Mr. R.K. Mahajan, Mr. Somesh Arora, Mr. Rajneesh Kumar, Mr. Anand Kishore, and distinguished civil servants cutting across various All India and central services, and very proud winners of TIOL Trophy of National Taxation Award 2020, the friends from Corporate India, of course, who are here, legal and media fraternity, lots of my colleagues from TIL, senior colleagues, Mr. Vijay Kumar is online, Mr. Chutan, Mr. Radhakrishnan, from Bombay, from Hyderabad, Mr. Bijay Ramachandran from Bangalore, Anuradha from Hindu. We have two colleagues, my former colleagues from Los Angeles, one from Jyoti, London. She is still awake. She is not keeping her eyes shut. She says that, sir, my eyes will not shut until we see the event. So much of wishes for all of them. I welcome all of them. My batchmates, lots of them, Indian in India, abroad, Mr. Luhani, Singh, Mr. Sahi, Kaushal, and of course, Mr. Rajesh Prasad from Rajkot. So we have, I welcome all of them. The members of the organizing committee, of course, Mr. Siddha, Mr. Sikhar, Mr. Rishabh, Mr. Sanjay Agrawal, Mr. Sudhir Thomas, Sikha, Richa, Anjum, Nikhat, Shashwati, Prashant, Devendra, Team Shutra, of course. I must give them the credit that they gave us a little, heart-wrenching time and pulsating time a few minutes back. But still, I give them the credit that we are live and we are able to connect with thousands of people across the country. And of course, the digital hype type which worked on TIOL Award portals right from the beginning. I also take the opportunity to welcome TIOL Tax Congress speakers, Mr. Dharmakirti Joshi from Krishil India, Mr. Akhilesh Ranjan, former member CVDT, Honorable Justice Godda Raghuram, whose blessings are with us, but unfortunately for medical exigencies again, this morning, probably he will not be able to make it. He texts me. And Mr. N. McIntyre, Additional Solicitor General of India, he is going to be with us. Mr. S.K. Rahman, Dr. Pasquale Pistone, who will be the academic chairman of the world's oldest and richest database on international taxation from the Netherlands, and my friend Mr. Pratik Jain from PricewaterhouseCoopers. I have received I have actually conceived TIOL Congress as a forum basically for grooming a new culture of fiscal thought leadership with an eye on near and future term fiscal responsibilities and development of India. And that is why I extend my apology to my friends from the industry who were very keen to have a kind of Q&A session. So I sincerely hope that the Congress will produce some big ideas with some key policy contours by drawing experiences from various tax jurisdictions in the fast changing and dynamic post-COVID world. So thank you for joining us on this momentous occasion for the first edition of TIOL Taxation Award. I would like to take the credit from the winners of the trophy by adding some pulsating moments to their waiting time, for finally holding the trophy, perhaps in a few minutes from now. Frankly speaking, all of us would like to give this credit or discredit to COVID-19, which delayed this event by over 1.5 years. And I must thank my guest of honor, Mr. N.K. Singh, for giving us the initial morale booster dose by launching TIOL Award portal in 2019. Thank you for your blessings and inspiring motivation, sir. And I would like to congratulate you for taking over Indian Economic Growth Society as its new president. So the result has come only yesterday. So thank you, sir. Congratulations. I would also like to thank the Punjab Finance Minister, Mr. Manpreet Singh Badal, and his able advisor, Mr. V.K. Garg, the former Secretary to Government of India and former Chairman, Union Public Service Commission, Mr. Deepak Gupta, who is remotely with us today, Dr. A.B. Dey from AIMS, Dr. Arvind Avasthi, former CAG, Deputy CAG, and of course, Mr. Enjai is with us, my mentor jury, Dr. Girish Ahuja and Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya, for the endorsement of our book, COVID-19, to be released today. Thank you, sir, all of you. You have spared valuable moments and went through the book and commented. Thank you, sir. So I must thank my publisher, Oakbridge series, Chandra, my friend Dhyani, and particularly the senior editor Priyanka Srivastava and her entire team for doing a wonderful, stellar job. Let me, friends, come back to the COVID-19. Ultimately, the whole thing, everything revolves around COVID-19 now. So COVID-19, it actually came as a hurricane, for all of us. Not only all of us, rather for the entire world. It has upset both lives and livelihoods for millions and millions of people, the rich as well as the people in the poor countries, and its butterfly effect continues to create a kind of chaos in the world economy even today. But what I would like to talk about here today is the long-term effect of the basic principles which would ultimately end up raising the height of the fiscal cliff, or perhaps fiscal prudence, and also perhaps fiscal appetite for most of the governments across the world in coming years or maybe coming months. So pandemic, I look at pandemic which has structurally transformed the paradigm of a welfare state worldwide. Some of the established principles such as means testing, which used to guide most of the governments across the world while designing welfare schemes for the poor, social insurance, naturally, when those who paid for it, they will get the social insurance, and some of those conditionalities where normally, you do something and you get paid. But all these principles have been literally thrown out of the window now. During the pandemic, this corona time, we have seen with popping eyes how the governments in many countries, including India, virtually wrote near blank checks for everything from job guarantees to food. And mind it was certainly not fiscal elitism or fiscal posturing for some political gains. The rich and even the poorer countries have done it for their own people. Perhaps a rush of blood at times of crisis, you may call it. Besides job retention scheme and economic stimulus packages, they have also sent cash. India is one of them. As much as $17 trillion worth of welfare measures have been taken in the past 18 months. Besides, I'm sure the purists from the world of economics would like to call it fiscal hanging or simply wading into the neck-deep fiscal waters. And there is no stopping to it. People are quite full-throated demanding a stronger and wider safety nets. And after all, pandemic has dumped over 25 crore people across the world into poverty again. And where will the resources come from? No trophy for guessing it. It will come from the taxpayers' pockets, and it has to. A brief economic history tells us that Great Depression 1929, Americans introduced Social Security. President Biden recently got a $3.5 trillion budget sanction again to expand the Social Security network. The Europeans did it by the turn of the 20th century, the Social Security networks. And for us in India, perhaps COVID is going to be the tool for a change in the connotation and meaning and definition of welfare. I feel that the last middle class today across the world, which is looking up to their government to help it at times of crisis and become more, this sort of crisis and pandemics will become more frequent visitors to this world. Perhaps they are looking up to their government for hand-holding, for relief, for job retention, and particularly the middle class. In fact, it's very interesting study which I came across that ILO, the International Labour Organization, says that it has given interesting insight into furlongs of event which preceded us, in last few months. Between January 2021 to February 2020, as many as 1,600 social protection schemes have been launched worldwide by the rich as well as the poor nations. And 60% of the families, they got relief from their governments, and they never had got any relief in the past. There was no history. So for the first time during the pandemic, the dependence of the middle class, 60% of the family, was so much of the government. And you can imagine the kind of resources required by the government and what will happen now in coming years, in particular country like India or poor countries. More interestingly, I feel that this climate change report which came recently, that the things have changed drastically so much for all of us. The life has changed unrecognizably. And an UN report on climate change says that life will change perhaps less for others and definitely more for the taxpayers who will have to pay taxes for their carbon consumption in the coming years. So with growing carbon footprint, we are likely to pay more taxes. Surprisingly, a recent survey in UK has indicated that out of 10 taxpayers, 6 are in favor of increasing the tax rate, the carbon tax rate. I'm pretty sure that in India, we have to be equally prepared for this kind of, those days are not too far away and certainly not too distant. And this is where I see a sustainable role for TIOL Taxation Award, which can act as a febrile catalyst, a socio-economic driver to motivate common taxpayers, not only to file their GST or income tax returns, but also to contribute to the exchequer's kitties in whatever manner one is obligated to do so. A fundamental problem which taxes I have come across, I have noticed, is that it gets guided largely by the dominoes effect. People tend to pay taxes if they tend to see neighbors, their friends, their family members, others in the kinship network paying their taxes in right size and right quantity. If a few scofflaws may tend to skip, our tax system fails to pin them down, then it threatens the core strength of the tax system, and that is the public trust. I sincerely hope that our fledgling and noble efforts would motivate more like-minded, public-spirited people to help the government, both the federal and the state, and ourselves by discharging our tax dues, and help tax-sized citizens also in terms of perhaps, to discharge their responsibilities and leave behind a very rich legacy for the posterity, a very healthy fiscal system, for the generations to come in India. At this juncture, we may also say that a prize for the fiscal inoculation of our society, our nation. Let us all remember that no nation is immune to the law of unintended consequences. With these words, I salute all the winners of the trophy today for their spirit and judgment to compete and form the first batch of the model taxpayers for the nation at large. Since COVID-19 is not going anywhere so soon, I do expect every honest and model taxpayers in India to turn into a sort of tax warrior and encourage others to pay their dues in India, and also able to flatten the curve of high tax rates across the board, a common perception in our society. It is a celebration day for the entire taxpayers community in India, and I congratulate each one of you on this historic day, thanking you all for encouraging our entire team of TIOL Knowledge Foundation and TIOL team, as well as attending this event and giving a major boost to our morale for attempting to give back more than what we have taken from our society. I do promise to deliver more at our next Taxation Award 2021, which should be notified in September, for the taxpayers to participate over a period of 4 months. Thanking you all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shailendra Kumar, for your address. And now let's quickly move, without further ado, towards the presentation ceremony of the coveted National Taxation Awards. Now, for these awards, the process was initiated by inviting online nominations. Out of those, valid nominations were taken into consideration, and sticking to a pre-decided criteria, the jury came out with final winners, and it wasn't an easy task. We'll have our jury members talk about 4 categories. The 5th category being a very, very special Lifetime Achievement Award, which we'll talk about as we reach there. But for the first 4 categories, each category has gold and silver trophies to be presented. There was a tie in 2 categories, so we will have 2 silver trophy winners under 2 categories of corporates above rupees 5,000 crores turnover and the facilitators category. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on with the presentation of the coveted National Taxation Awards 2020 with our very first category of corporates with a turnover of more than 5,000 crores. To present the gold in this category, we have Mr. N.K. Singh, Chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission, who is virtually present with us here today. And the gold under the corporate turnover more than 5,000 crores goes to Maruti Suzuki India Limited. We have Mr. Pradeep Gar, Executive Director Finance, and I'm told Mr. D.D. Goyal, Executive Advisor Finance, to receive the award here. So please come here. We have Mr. N.K. Singh presiding over it, and that's the award, sir. Can we please have it presented to the winners? Yeah. So if you could please take the award. I request the hostess to please come forward and present the award. Thank you. Many congratulations, Maruti Suzuki India Limited. I request the winners as they come and receive the awards, please remove your masks for the photos. Thank you. And moving on to the silver under the category of more than 5,000 crores of turnover. To give this award away, I would like to request Mr. A.N. Jha, former Finance Secretary and member of the 15th Finance Commission, to please come forward to present the silver under this category. Sir. And the silver in this category goes to Max Life Insurance Company Limited. We have Mr. Subhash Agarwal, CVP Finance, and Mr. Mandeep Mehta, Deputy CFO, here to receive the awards. Many congratulations, Max Life Insurance Company Limited, for winning silver under the category of corporate turnover more than 5,000 crores. Many congratulations. Thank you so much, Mr. Jha. We request you to please stay back. Mr. Jha, if you could just stay back to give the next award as well. As I said that there is a tie in silver category. It is this category of corporate turnover more than 5,000 crores. And the second silver here goes to Larsen and Toubro. We have Mr. Sudhir Sharma, Joint General Manager, here to collect the award. Mr. Sudhir. That's Larsen and Toubro, ladies and gentlemen, the silver trophy winner under corporate turnover more than 5,000 crores category. Many congratulations, Mr. Sudhir. Thank you. Mr. Jha, I would like to request you to please stay there. We request you to please give away the silver award in the next category as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the next category is for corporates with turnover from 500 to 5,000 crores. The gold in this category will be presented by Mr. N.K. Singh, of course, who is with us virtually. Can I have the hostess get the trophies, please? Can we have the gold trophies under the category of turnover from 500 to 5,000 crores? And the winner of gold in this category is Delta Electronics India Private Limited. Mr. Prabhu De Mishra, Director, Commercial and Logistics, and Mr. Rahul Malik, Vice President, Commercial and Logistics, are here from Delta Electronics India Limited to receive the award. Many congratulations, Delta Electronics. And now moving on to the silver in this category. The silver here goes to Alembic Pharmaceuticals Limited. We have Mr. Amresh Chaudhary, Vice President, Global Group Tax Head, here with us to receive the award. Many congratulations, Alembic Pharmaceuticals, and thank you so much, Mr. Jha. You may take a seat now. Thank you. Moving on to the next category, before we announce the names, I would like to request Mr. G.C. Srivastava, former Director General of International Taxation, CBDT, Ministry of Finance, to please join us to present the silver category under that. Our next category is looking at encouraging tax technology service providers by recognizing their contribution. The gold, again, here will be given by Mr. N.K. Singh. The gold goes to Professional Softtech Private Limited. I request Mr. Srivastava to please stay back. In this category of tax technology service providers, and it goes to PricewaterhouseCoopers Private Limited. We have Mr. Siddharth Mehta, partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers Private Limited, and one more gentleman joining to receive this. Thank you very much. I request Mr. Srivastava to please stay back. Sir, as we have to move on to the next category of active facilitators and intermediaries. Again, I would like to request you to present the silver awards in that. The gold to be given by Mr. N.K. Singh, who's of course present with us virtually. Facilitators and intermediary category, the award goes to Manoj Yadav. And we have Mr. Pankaj Kumar to receive this. Do we have a representative here to receive the award? TIOL will make sure it reaches the winner. Thank you so much, hostess. You can take the gold back. We don't have anybody here to receive this. For the silver in this facilitators and intermediaries category, it goes to Pritam Mahure. We have the founder, Mr. Pritam Mahure himself with us. Many, many congratulations on winning the silver. And as I mentioned, there's another category with a tie in silver. It is this. There's another silver in facilitators and intermediaries category won by Swami Associates. Mr. G. Natarajan, Senior Partner, Swami Associates, is here with us to receive the award. Thank you very much. Many congratulations, and thank you, Mr. Srivastava. You may now occupy your seat. Thank you. A big congratulations to all the winners present here, and a big thank you to Mr. N.K. Singh for being there to present the gold virtually. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move on to a very, very special award. This award is a Lifetime Achievement Award, and we have named it TIOL Fiscal Heritage Award. This is to acknowledge rich contribution to India's taxation space over a period of time. TIOL Fiscal Heritage Award goes to India's former Finance Minister, late Arun Jaitley, a very, very special video that we have from Mr. N.K. Singh, who worked very closely with Mr. Arun Jaitley, paying him rich tributes.
The contribution of late Arun Jaitley in the management of public constitutional amendment in what was called the grand bargain, which needed his sophistication of negotiating skills in plenty. Second, in terms of exit policy, he had fathered the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. Third and foremost, a great believer in the importance of macroeconomic policy based on the recommendations of the Committee on Fiscal Policies, which I had the privilege to chair. He with alacrity accepted the fiscal rules, the rules on debt management, and got it approved in Parliament in a manner which was extraordinary. Indeed, these iconic changes in economic policy have made a fundamental difference to our entire policy approach on the economy.
Thank you so much, Mr. N.K. Singh, for laying down the role played by late Finance Minister towards India's taxation space. We would request Mr. N.K. Singh, who's virtually present with us, to present this award and to accept this on behalf of TIOL Knowledge Foundation. We have Mr. Vijay Kumar, Editor-in-Chief TIOL, joining us virtually from Hyderabad. Can we have the award in the front, please? That's the TIOL Fiscal Heritage Award for late Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to invite some of the winners to come and share a few words about their experience of the awards and the message they want to give out in general about tax compliance. Starting with the category of more than 5,000 crores, I would like to begin with Mr. D.D. Goyal, Executive Advisor Finance of Maruti Suzuki India Limited. I would like you to remove your masks. And also, if all of you who are coming here on the dais could keep your speeches a little brief just because of paucity of time. Welcome, sir.
Respected and Honorable Chief Guest Justice Vineet Saran Sir, Chief of Jury R.C. Lahoti Sir, Sri N.K. Singh Sir, Ajit Kumar Sir, Mahapatra Sir, Shailendra Sir, all dignitaries sitting on the dais. I convey our sincere thanks and appreciation to Mr. Shailendra and Tax India for organizing this event. It's a very unique event to honor or recognize contribution of taxpayers. I am D.D. Goyal. I have recently retired from Maruti Suzuki from the post of Executive Director Finance and has been succeeded by my colleague Mr. Pradeep Garg as Executive Director. I am associated with Maruti as advisor now. In our view, payment of due taxes is the most important duty of each and every citizen and corporate. In other words, payment of tax is a price to remain part of a civilized society and of a nation. I have been associated with Tax India for more than 20 years and had a lot of interaction with Mr. Shailendra. They are doing a great service to nation by spreading relevant knowledge and making everybody aware about the compliances. I also convey my sincere thanks and appreciation to all government officers doing the national duty of tax administration and bringing a lot of efficiency through continuous improvements and digitization. I also convey my thanks to Maruti's top management for giving the proper guidance. Also, once again, sincere thanks to organizers for awarding this to Maruti and also organizing this event. Thank you all. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Mr. D.D. Goyal, Executive Advisor Finance, Maruti Suzuki India. And next up, I would like to invite Mr. Mandeep Mehta, Deputy CFO, Max Life Insurance Company Limited, the winner of silver under the category, to please come and say a few words.
First of all, thank you, Tax India, as well as esteemed jury panel. I have with me my tax head, Mr. Subhash, and I can't take this opportunity from him. So please let me allow Subhash to say a few words.
A very good morning to all of you. This is an opportunity to say thanks Tax India Online for organizing this wonderful event. And also I put my gratitude to honorable jury for selecting Max Live team for the award. And with same breath, I put my sincere thanks for all dignitaries. I feel privileged to have this opportunity. This award is not only a validation what we put, or you can say do tax compliances, and also add value to business for ensuring that that we are always tax compliant and in all circumstances. A constant thing is tax changes, which would give its own challenges and opportunities. So this award persuades team to think differently and innovative to be ahead of curve. It is said that Rome was not built in a single day. I would like to add that Rome was not built by a single person. And thanks to my team, Vikas, Saurabh, and also my mentors, Mandeep, Amrit, and our Chief Executive Officer, Prashant Tripathi. Thank you so much. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Mandeep. Thank you, Mr. Subhash, and many congratulations to you. Moving on, I would like to invite the winner of silver under the category, that's Larsen Toubro, on the company's behalf. Mr. Sudhir Sharma, Joint General Manager, is with us. Mr. Sudhir.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, those who are present here, dignitaries, as well as the people who are connected with us online. It gives me immense pleasure to hold this award on behalf of Larsen and Toubro. My thanks are due to TIOL for giving us this platform and also conducting the award as well as Tax Congress. Our thanks are also due to the 7-member jury who has given recognition to our efforts. It inspires us to do better and better, and will continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sudhir. Hope to see you at the next awards too. Moving on with the next category, corporates with a turnover of 500 to 5,000 crores. I would like to invite the gold winner, Delta Electronics India Private Limited, Mr. Prabhu D. Mishra, Director Commercial and Logistics, joining us.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. honorable guests, jury members, and Tax India team. It's a moment of pride and even a pleasure to receive this award. And I mean, this will surely boost, our zeal to be more tax compliant and uh, partners ourselves in nation building. Also, I would like to appreciate this effort from Tax India team to provide a platform to all the corporates for a healthy competition. And I mean, it's like a platform where you motivate all the corporates to be more tax compliant and give their contribution for the development of the country. Also, I mean, this is the first time we have received this award in this category, and I hope that we will have many more in near future. Thank you very much. Thanks to the jury. Thanks to all the honorable members and the Tax India team. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning to the dignitary guests on the dais and the juries who are joining us online and all the audiences present here and joining us virtually. So, as my colleague said, yes, we are really privileged to receive this award, and this will really boost us to work hard further and to get similar awards and many more in future. And in spite of this COVID-19, still I would appreciate all the taxpayers, in spite of working from home and so many difficulties, they have make it happen that all they have paid the tax in time and they have fulfilled their obligations. And this thing should continue. We should not, surrender before any pandemic situation, so that the revenue should get affected. For the government of India to, we should help the government to make it more booster in the to face this situation. And I must congratulate all the winners who are present here. Thank you Times India Online for arranging this wonderful event. Thank you all.
Many congratulations, Delta Electronics India Limited. Now, I would like to invite the silver winner in the corporate turnover category of 500 crores to 5,000 crores, Alembic Pharmaceuticals, Mr. Amresh Chaudhary, Vice President, Global Group Tax Head. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much. It is huge pleasure and honor to receive such award on behalf of Alembic Pharma. So we are deeply honored for this recognition. Thanks to TIOL Taxation Award teams, TIOL Congress, thanks to respected jury member. We try to do our compliance better to best, in time tax payment, all the compliances, so that we can build our nation. We become a partner for nation. Thank you so much to all jury members.
Congratulations to you once again. Moving on to the next category of tax technology service providers. I would like to invite the silver winner here. That's PricewaterhouseCoopers. Mr. Siddharth Mehta, partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers, is here with us.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank all the jury members and TIOL for considering us for this award. We are really here to collect this award on behalf of the entire tax tech team and the indirect tax team at PwC, who have all worked relentlessly over the last few years to provide a comprehensive suite of tax technology solutions to large number of companies to help them manage their tax compliances more effectively. Looking forward to adding many more new solutions to our tax tech portfolio and to getting the gold award next time.
Thank you, TIOL. Thank you, jury members. I mean, it's a different thing. Tax technology is not something that we have heard of earlier. GST really brought it about for all of us. And one of the things that we used to do in tax was interpretation. So I and Siddharth were interpreting the agenda, and it said addressed by one of the top trophy members. So we thought whether we all will get the opportunity or only one of them. So, but with technology, things have different. Instead of interpreting that law, we are actually providing services to our clients. And as Siddharth said, it's an award for PwC as well as our indirect tax members or team. And a great thanks to all our clients and customers who have really helped us grow in this whole field. Thank you so much.
Many congratulations, PwC, once again. Moving on to our next category that acknowledges the contribution of active facilitators and intermediaries. In this category, I would like to invite the silver winner, Mr. Preetham Mahure, founder of Preetham Mahure, to share a few words with us.
Dignitaries on the dais, dignitaries of the dais, and dignitaries on the online dais. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to receive this prestigious Tax India Online Award. I must mention that my memories go back to as old as 25 years back when my dad expired. He was working in CID. That time, because of the financial condition, I had to sell one time breads. So from selling bread to becoming a breadwinner for the family, and subsequently working in the field of tax, and then taking the career and I moving along with it, and then working with right now more than 20 team members. There are so many memories of the past, and I must mention that even the times I had with Rishabh when we were in Dubai, it was only possible because of tax. Because had we not worked in Indian GST, it was not possible for us as Indian tax professional to work in Dubai VAT, or for that matter UAE, Bahrain, Oman, and Kuwait right now. So we have worked on global VAT implementation also, but it was only possible due to the GST experience we had as tax practitioner in India. So I must mention that the tax reform which CBIC in the Inter Finance Ministry which has brought, it has not helped Indian GST payers, but it has also helped the global VAT payers also. So it's a amazing thing, I must say, which the CBIC has done. So I must thank my family members and my team members, without whom this receiving this award was not possible. So CS Sahil Tharani is with us today. So thanks Sahil for the entire journey and for the entire support. So thank you all. Thanks.
Congratulations, Mr. Preetham, once again, and thank you so much for sharing your insights. Moving on, I would like to invite the other silver winner in the category of facilitators and intermediaries, that's Swami Associates, and we have Mr. G. Natarajan, senior partner, here with us.
A very warm good morning to all the people who have assembled here physically as well as virtually. This award is very special for more than one reason. In fact, TIOL, which started in 2000, and we are contemporaries. I also resigned from the department somewhere in the early part of 2000, and our journey was together always. We have grown together, and from that time onwards, TIOL has been a very good platform. In fact, if I have written more than 500 articles till now, more than 300 have been published in Tax India Online alone. So that journey we are always throughout, and getting recognized by your contemporary is very special. The second specialty about this particular award is, this is day in and day out, we get lot of messages, we get lot of mails and all offering awards for a sponsorship. So that is the trend nowadays, whereas this foolproof and flawless mechanism through which the awardees have been selected, and I definitely feel that all the awardees deserve these awards in a honest manner. Whom else we want? A former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India. He is the head of the jury. So what more we want to ensure that this particular award system is completely flawless and absolutely honest. And thirdly, there are various awards catering to a particular segment. But this is the first award, and maybe years go on, this horizon is going to further expand, and the awareness among the public also will be more. And if you see the award categories, they award all the categories of it, starting from the tax collectors, the commissionerates, who are very in the forefront. Maybe this year, a lack of awareness and due to corona and all, that particular segment is not there. But they have announced it for the commissionerate, that is the taxpayer, the tax collector. And there is an award for the taxpayers in different categories. And there is also awards for the people who are in between the taxpayers and the tax collectors, like we, the legal service providers and the technology service providers. So this award has been designed in such a way to cover the entire spectrum of tax. So that is another specialty about this tax. And we feel very honored to receive this particular award, especially on the first edition. And I don't take this award as a recognition of whatever we have been doing for the past 18 years. I take this award as a stark reminder of our responsibility. The responsibility to provide succor to all the taxpayers in the country whenever any injustice is done to them. That is a responsibility. At the same time, to strike a proper balance and protect the genuine revenue interest also, so that the revenue interest is not jeopardized. So that balancing act we have to do, that responsibility is being reminded by this award. And I assure all of you that we will carry out with our responsibilities. And at this moment, I thank all the team members of Swami Associates who made it possible, who made us to reach this particular level. Thank you, Tax India. Thank you, jury. Thank you, all the dignitaries and participants. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. G. Natarajan, for that very passionate speech, I must say, and your kind words towards TIOL's work. They really encourage and motivate us, and we promise to keep the work up next year as well. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to call the last winner for the speech here, who actually couldn't be present with us physically, but he made time to send a virtual message to us. That's gold winner under the category of Tax Technology Service Providers. The gold has been won by Professional Softtech Private Limited. And we have Mr. Rajesh Agarwal saying a few words virtually.
I am thankful to Tax India Online and the jury present here for honoring Computex with the gold trophy under the category Tax Technology Service Providers. Computex software was developed in 1989 by my elder brother, Mr. Rajesh Gupta. Initially, it was developed for our personal use. Realizing its tremendous potential, we decided to commercialize in 1998. It would be impossible for us to achieve this without the help and support from our team. I convey my heartiest appreciation to all. It is my delight to be chosen for this respected award. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajesh Agarwal, for sharing that virtual message with us. Before I move on with the agenda of the rest of the day, can we have a huge round of applause for all the winners, please? You know, we're all talking about paying taxes here. Let me just ask my audience, which one do you think out of all the 5 senses is the most important sense that a taxpayer uses? Any guesses? Let's think of it. You have your eyes, you have your ears. Which is that one sense that a taxpayer has to use? I heard the right answer somewhere. It came from the first table, right? So some can close their eyes, some can shut their ears, close their mouths, but you can never close or shut your nose because you always have to pay through your nose. So on that note, let's move on further with the agenda of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the work that a jury has put into this very, very extensive exercise. The jury process of arriving at the winners of these awards has been very tiring. I would like to take a moment to thank all our jury members for the time and the effort they put in for the National Taxation Awards 2020. Actually, at this point, I would like to invite one of our jury members, Mr. M.C. Joshi, former chairman, Central Board of Direct Taxes, Ministry of Finance, to share his thoughts, his experience, and how difficult it was to judge this process. Mr. M.C. Joshi.
The chief guest of honor, Mr. N.K. Singh, Mr. Bhattacharya, and Mr. Girish Ahuja. Members of the jury and distinguished gentlemen who are here today. Firstly, I would like to congratulate Mr. Shailendra Kumar, CEO, and his team, TIOL, for instituting these national awards. For a long time, in the past few years, the tax department and the government has given away awards recognizing taxpayers. However, most of these awards have been based on, high net worth individuals who are paying more tax. The underlying condition for these awards is, of course, tax. But what is unique about these awards, number one, that this is perhaps the first award on taxation that is being given by a private entity in India. Earlier on, most of the awards were given by the government. Secondly, these awards are quite unique in the sense that it's just not only tax. There are also other underlying issues which have been highlighted. When I was looking at the list of other items, there was, growth in exports, make in India, employment and other issues. And perhaps in the future, issues like environment will also be highlighted. As part of the jury, I would also thank the other jury members for spending so much time and energy, burning the midnight oil sometimes, because it was such an elaborate structure and unique structure that TIOL had created that the jury also had to put in a tremendous amount of work. Having said that, I would also say that Shailen Kumar deserves to be congratulated on another count as CEO, since he has built up this organization from virtually scratch in the past 20 years through sheer dint of hard work. And I think it's a good example for others to create such a important knowledge platform. Now to moving on further, today, we need sustainable growth in tax revenues. For that, I have worked in the department between 1974-75 to 2012. So I have been in that period when I have seen a total transition in the way we work. Throughout the time I was there, the process of technology and implementing technology, computerization as you call it in the department, started somewhere in late 80s and 90s and really picked up a lot of steam after 2000, where the government sanctioned a huge amount of expenditure of 250 crores or more for computerization. And I'm happy to say that within a decade or so, computerization was implemented in the tax department. And I would also compliment the tax department on the issue that it was perhaps one of the first departments in the government of India which completed its complete computerization. Having come to the digital platform has many advantages, and one of them was efficiency. And I can say this much, not because I am from the department, I've been 10 years outside the department. The technology has contributed a great deal in raising the efficiency of the tax administration. The other point I would like to briefly state, since time is short, that a report of the International Fiscal Association Annual Congress demonstrated that tinkering with tax and enforcing payment of tax through coercion has limited advantages. And you can only go to a certain extent. But it's not likely to generate sustainable tax growth over the years. My personal opinion is that tax morale of a country is very important in achieving sustainable economic growth as well as tax revenues, generating tax revenues. The tax department has done all it can. For example, it has cut down on litigation. Various measures have been taken for that. It has streamlined the processing of returns and immediate refunds which are generated. And this has helped because large amount of tax is collected by the income tax department and the indirect taxes by the CBIC by withholding tax. The success of collecting so much withholding tax is also dependent on giving people refunds when it's due. Otherwise, withholding tax can be a big disadvantage and can make people evade tax. Having said that, what is tax morale? Tax morale is generally when you have voluntary tax compliance. So here it is, I think, the government which can do a lot. First is make only those laws which can be implemented easily. Number one. Two, remove archaic laws which hamper economic development. The law of torts and many other laws which need to be there so that contracts can be enforced. Once contracts are enforceable and the rule of law is there, automatically sustainable tax revenue increases. Secondly, you have to improve public services. I mean, I have been on the other side now as a normal taxpayer, average taxpayer. And what is the normal refrain from people? The road is not built, you don't get electricity, you don't get water. These are services which the government is meant to provide. Once public services become efficient, the taxpayer is motivated to pay more tax. In fact, studies have shown that in Africa, when public services increased, the tax revenues also increased. So, our country, India, is at a crossroads at the moment with good economic growth and prospects. But to get sustainable tax revenue, to put it in a nutshell, we have to have good governance. So I know that the government is trying in this regard, but it has to review these because there is a limit to what revenue department can do to generate revenue. Yes, it will generate revenue, economic progress takes place as economic progress takes place. But to sustain this increase in tax revenue at a higher rate, you will need good governance and many other factors go into this, and that I'm sure the government will look. With these words, I would like to conclude and wish TIOL great success for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. MC Joshi, for sharing your experience and devoting your time and effort towards the jury process of National Taxation Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time we move ahead towards a very special message from a very special guest. The chairman of Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, Mr. Ajit Kumar. He could not be physically or even virtually present with us today because he's had to go to Mumbai with Honorable Finance Minister, but we are very thankful to him for taking out time and sending this message. CBIC Chairman, Mr. Ajit Kumar.
A very warm greetings to the respected dignitaries on the dais, Honorable Chief Guest, Justice Shri Vineet Saran, Chairman 15th Finance Commission, Shri N.K. Singh, and Chairman CBDT, Shri J.B. Mohapatra, honorable members of the jury, awardees, and distinguished guests on the occasion of Tax India Online 2020 Awards ceremony. Let me at the outset express my regret at not being present in person at the function. I am, however, grateful to Messrs. Tax India Online for giving me this opportunity to address this gathering comprising of who's who from the government, trade and industry, and of course, the taxpayers. It was important for me to be here, not only to represent CBIC, but also to be present on the occasion when TIOL, on its 21st birthday, has decided to woo the tax community through this public platform. I wish them great success in this maiden venture of theirs. I must also congratulate Tax India Online for envisaging the awards categories curated to almost all the segments of the multifaceted tax system of our country. I am sure that Tax India Online would achieve its objective of the award to motivate, encourage the contribution of compliant taxpayers, tax technology service providers, active facilitators, positive-minded fiscal journalists, as well as tax-friendly and service-oriented commissionaires for furthering the economic growth and act as a reliable channel providing taxpayers' feedback to the policymakers. The field of taxation is a very complex one. In any taxation system, it is traditionally thought that the taxpayers and the tax administrators are its most important elements. However, it's the galaxy of tax pundits, facilitators like the tax practitioners, technology service providers, etc., who contribute to the success of our tax system. Their role has largely gone unnoticed. This needs to be recognized, and awards like this go a long way in honoring their contributions. The Honorable Prime Minister has envisioned to make India a $5 trillion economy by 2024-25. He has also given a clarion call to give a boost to the export sector and make it an engine of growth. We at CBIC have been striving to contribute our mite to help make this a reality. The last 2 years have been a challenging one for the economy caused by the pandemic. However, government has seen in this adversity an opportunity to bring in structural change. We at CBIC have taken on this challenge seriously and have sought to make trade more competitive by reducing cost and time and increase profitability for trade and industry. The Indian tax system has always been envisioned around voluntary tax compliance. We have tried to reduce the compliance burden and make procedures more simpler. We are sure that the good practice and ease of doing business processes that we have initiated will usher in a more friendly tax environment, which will increase the tax collection while not increasing the tax rates. Having said that, we have also sent out a strong message to the non-compliant taxpayers about our endeavor to deal with them firmly. The CBIC in recent times have taken numerous steps in this direction, and more so to ease things during the COVID-19 pandemic by quickly coming out with relaxations of compliance requirements and exemptions, tax reductions on COVID-19 medical equipment and drugs, as well as waiver of duty, fine and penalty. On the departmental side, we quickly rolled out e-offices across the country so that there was no disruption in our services to the trade. On the trade facilitation front, several steps have been taken by CBIC. On the GST side, smoothening of the GST return filing process, as well as nil filing of GSTR3 returns through SMS facility, quarterly return and monthly payment, that is the QRMP scheme for taxpayers with turnover of less than 5 crores, return and enhancement and advance project REAP, e-invoicing system, Aadhaar-based authentication of registration process, and many measures taken to reduce the compliance burden on the taxpayers, along with the recent amnesty scheme to provide relief to taxpayers regarding late fee for pending returns, etc., to name a few. At the same time, several effective measures on the policy and administrative fronts have been taken to curb the menace of fraudulent input tax credit. ITC availment based on fake invoices, which is essentially an invoice raised without actual supply of goods or services. On the customs side, under the flagship program of CBIC, that is Turant Customs, a sea change has been brought about in the way how Indian customs works. Faceless assessment, contactless customs, paperless customs, shift from thrust on gateway controls to post-clearance audit, integrating all partner government agencies, PGAs, on eSanchit, EODB scorecard for customs brokers, expansion of Turant Suvidha Kendras, measures to align Customs Tariff Act 1975 with WCO HS Convention. Other measures include enhancement of direct port delivery to 90%, introduction of RMS for drawback claims, dispensing with periodic renewals of licenses, approvals, and digitization of AU applications, and a few initiatives to mention that facilitated trade in a big manner. Our GST collections during the past 8 months have crossed the 1 lakh mark, despite lowering our average tax rates. These are signs of a positive outlook by a resilient trade and industry. The recent United Nations Global Survey on Digital and Sustainable Trade Facilitation report has seen a swing of India's score from 78.49% in 2019 to 90.32% in 2021. With these changes that have been set in motion, I am sure that the clarion call of our Honorable Prime Minister will become a reality sooner than expected. I wish the award ceremony a grand success. I take this opportunity to congratulate the award winners in various categories, which will surely motivate the peers in respective fields to excel and bring in positive change. To those who were considered in the race but have just missed being in the list, all of us hope that in times to come, we will see them in the awardees list also. On this solemn occasion, I also remember the yeoman service rendered by the large number of tax officials who laid down their lives in the line of duty due to the pandemic. To conclude, I would once again congratulate Tax India Online for this well thought out initiative. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ajit Kumar, Chairman CBIC. Moving ahead, we have yet another important message from Chairman of Central Board of Direct Taxes and our special guest, Mr. J.B. Mohapatra, who is also with the Honorable Finance Minister today, but was kind enough to send this message for us.
All the distinguished women and men who have joined the TIOL Award and the TIOL Tax Congress today. Warm greetings to Honorable Justice Vineet Saran of Supreme Court, Sri N.K. Singh, Chairman of the 15th Finance Commission, Sri Ajit Kumar, Chairman CBIC, and Honorable Justice R.C. Lahoti, former Chief Justice of India. Before I start, let me congratulate TIOL on instituting and successfully hosting TIOL Awards 2020 with an object to acknowledge the contribution of various stakeholders in the tax space. These awards recognize the importance of governments, institutions, service providers, intermediaries, thought leaders, and tax practitioners to the deepening of fiscal roots in a young and vibrant nation like India. At the outset, let me state the obvious. These are uncertain times. The last 18 months have intensely transformed the way organizations and individuals operate. There have not been many spheres of life and living that remain unaffected by the pandemic. However, societies and communities are living and breathing entities. So the work of nation building go on relentlessly as we forge our way delicately into the future. Keeping in mind the stresses and strains that the pandemic has generated, we continue to focus on stability and innovation in tax administration. While we are stabilizing on our strength, we are making all efforts to address our challenges with innovation and efficiency. Following this approach, the Income Tax Department has over the last few years capitalized on its core strength of investigation, alternate dispute resolution, and digitization of the compliance burden to bring stability in its fundamentals. At the same time, we have shown tremendous agility and resilience by regular reforms and continuous course correction. The results have been unsurprisingly commensurate to the efforts made. While bigger reforms tend to occupy our mind space, the small changes we make to processes add value to an organization's work life and ease for the citizens while transacting with the government. Identifying 271 compliance burden for a review, this department has already, before 15th of August 2021, found and removed a total of 71 redundant compliance burden. 152 of the remaining compliance burdens are already online, and the rest 42 would go online in the coming months. Internally, standards of delivery for rendering taxpayer services and instituting taxpayer charter cell at each of the principal chief CIT's office for monitoring of service delivery have been ensured. Stability of the substantive system, simplicity of administrative process, and certainty about issues including tax laws are the bedrocks of our vision. This vision also plays its part when India leads or participates in international tax cooperation fora for ensuring transparency in exchange of information, or any discussion on the taxation of digital economy, or strengthening of our mutual agreement procedures. In terms of reforms, CBDT has been one of the very few large departments of the country to have continuously innovated to the needs and demands of the economy in the recent past. This includes the Income Declaration Scheme, the Vivad Se Vishwas Act, concessional corporate tax regime, tax benefits for startups, simplified income tax regime, faceless assessment, appeal and penalty schemes, the IFSC regime, amongst others. A discussion about tax administration would not be complete without the numbers. Net collections as on 17th of August 2021 stand at rupees 3.5 lakh crores, vis-a-vis net collections of 1.88 lakh crores as on 17th of August 2020, which is an increase of about 90%. The growth is equally reflected in both corporate tax and income tax from non-corporates. We have seen significant growth in the securities transactions tax collections. They are touching 9,100 crores as on 17th of August 2021. Growth in collections cannot but be on account of continuing reforms. At this juncture, I would reiterate that as a department, we are always cautiously optimistic about everything, including the speedy recovery of our economy. We are striving every day to secure our country's strength to mobilize resources for government's ambitious development goals. Our focus continues to remain efficient, effective tax administration, and improved voluntary compliance. The ongoing reform in international taxation, economic recovery post-COVID, and the present and the future of the GST are all extremely important topics in the taxation space today. I wish the speakers all the best. I am sure the TIOL Congress will lead to vibrant and engaging discussions on these critical topics. I also congratulate the winners of the TIOL Awards. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Mr. J.B. Mahapatra, for making our time and sharing this video with us. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to request our esteemed guests who are present on the dais, all the jury members who are present with us virtually, and of course, our guest of honor, Mr. N.K. Singh, is also with us, to launch a very special book. This book is on COVID-19, Genocide Without Parallel, authored by CEO and founder editor TIOL, Mr. Shailendra Kumar, and published by Oakbridge. I would request the book copies to be presented on the stage, please. Can we have the book copies come on the stage? So we would like to give it to the, and they can, they will, one of them will, you can just. Now, if we could just unribbon it and open the book. I request all of you, to please stand and gather with the book in your hands, sir. Thank you to all the guests on the dais for releasing the book, and many congratulations to you, Mr. Shailendra. Now, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, it's time that I formally invite our guest of honor, Mr. N.K. Singh, to say a few words. Of course, Mr. N.K. Singh needs no introduction. As the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission, Mr. N.K. Singh only recently submitted his reports to the Honorable President of India on a wide range of terms of references notified by the Union Government. A seasoned diplomat and civil servant holding multiple critical posts in the Prime Minister's office to Ministry of Finance, he also became a member of the Rajya Sabha. He was part of the core team which laid the roadmap for unfolding of the economic and fiscal reforms in the year 1991. That's not all. Mr. Singh has authored many prominent books, but the one that stands out is Portraits of Power, Half a Century of Being at Ringside. We are very, very grateful to have Mr. N.K. Singh join us virtually. Can we have his link up?
I just spoke to him. He has got a little fever because he got vaccinated yesterday. So he may join us a little later. He said, just give me some rest for some time. So thank you, sir. I mean, you have taken so much of pain, and despite this vaccination, and and we are talking about the vaccination of the economy, and and so thank you, sir. Maybe you could join us later if possible. If not possible, please take rest. So we will proceed with the Congress. Yes.
Sure. So now it's time for us to officially proceed with the TIOL Tax Congress. And to move into this Congress, I would like to request Mr. A.N. Jha and Mr. Shrivastava to please stay back with us on the dais. And I would like to thank the other two guests for making time out for attending the award ceremony today. Thank you very much. And now let me quickly introduce the very first session. Mr. Jha will be chairing the very first session of the Congress. So I would request Mr. Jha to please stay back. So, ladies and gentlemen, the first session of the Congress is about post-COVID economic recovery, what is to be done. It is, of course, being chaired by Mr. A.N. Jha, former Finance Secretary and member of the 15th Finance Commission. I request Dr. Dharmakriti Joshi, Chief Economist at CRISIL India, who is joining us virtually from Mumbai, to take the session forward. Just a few words to introduce Mr. Joshi. Mr. Joshi rolled out his career with the reputed NCAER in Delhi, where he spent 11 years keeping an eye on macro variables impacting the Indian economy. Having a master's degree in economics, he went on to join Harvard for specialized courses and is presently posted as Chief Economist at CRISIL India, Mumbai. Over to you, Dr. Dharmakriti Joshi.
Thank you very much. I would need to project my presentation. Yeah, that's it. I hope it's visible.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Respected chair of the session and dear friends, first of all, I would like to thank the TIOL for giving me this honor. I'm extremely happy and feel privileged to be here. Well, we all know that COVID-19 has been the biggest economic shock that India underwent after independence. And also, I think it's been a major health challenge. So in a way, the blow that the health system took, I think, or the growth took, was compounded by the misery that the people faced. There were deep fears around safety, which I think to some extent still continue, reduction in incomes of the people, and also income visibility to some extent. So it's a major crisis that we are going through right now. What I'd like to do in the next couple of minutes is take you through what we understand is happening to the economy, what is being done to address some of the concerns, and whether they're adequate or not. I'd look at it in two ways. One is to look at the immediate short-term view, what's going to happen in 6 to 12 months. And the second is to look at the longer run. I'll focus more on the shorter run and also touch upon the longer run towards the end. There are two kinds of factors on which economic outlook depends. The first one for a country like India would be exogenous factors, which we can also in simple terms call the luck factors, where I think factors like global growth come in. Well, the global outlook for the current fiscal year, I think, is much, much brighter. The advanced countries have got enough vaccinations, they have vaccinated themselves. And as a result, the services sector has opened up there and they are pushing the global growth up. It is very uneven in the sense that the emerging markets, which were engines of growth, are actually sputtering right now. So global growth being good means our exports are good, and that is what is very clearly playing out. Second, I think luck factor for us is the monsoons. I mean, the monsoons as we speak are about 8 to 9% below normal. But I think that is still regarded as normal in the IMD parlance. And agriculture overall is expected to be normal this year. There's some dent to some of the crops, but overall, I think the sowing has picked up, and the trends currently are that things are looking up for agriculture. Now, I think coming to the second set of factors which we can influence, which have an impact on growth. So first of all, I think we have the vaccination and the third wave. I think these, I'm not saying that we can dictate the third wave, but what I'm saying is that we can at least influence how it plays out, whether it is severe or it is less severe. I think that will depend on what kind of behavior people do, what kind of vaccinations we have. So on the basis of these two factors, we have two growth scenarios for India. The first growth scenario is a normal scenario where base case, where GDP is expected to grow at 9.5%. This assumes that 70% of the adult population gets vaccinated by the end of the year. If this fails, I think then the growth could slip below that and could be around 8%. The second factor which we can influence and which has an impact on economic outlook in the near term and also I think over the medium run is the policy. And in policy, we have monetary policy, which is what the central bank does, cutting interest rates, providing liquidity to the system, and also fiscal policy where the central government, the state government, they step in to spend money because the private sector, the individuals have limited capabilities, so the governments become the support of the last resort in this kind of a scenario. So I think taking that further, let me talk about a bit about the pandemic. What you can see from this chart is that the second wave was very severe. I mean, it rose very sharply, and also I think it came down quite sharply. Right now, we are stuck between 35,000 to 40,000 cases category. So we're not sure whether I think the second wave has actually ended while we wait for the third wave. The interesting part is that despite the fact that the second wave was so virulent, the economic management or the lockdown, so to say, they were not as stringent. I mean, the Oxford Stringency Index, which I have plotted on the chart, very clearly shows that the stringency of the lockdowns was much less severe. So this is also telling you that we are learning to live with the virus now. I mean, otherwise this wouldn't have been possible. Looking ahead, I think there are many questions to be answered. We don't have answers to those. How the infectious, the new variants will be, whether they will be more virulent, or whether they'll dodge the vaccines. I think all these are very critical factors which will influence our economic outlook. The global experience till date tells us that the vaccines do blunt the virus, but they don't defeat it. I mean, as you can see in countries which are highly vaccinated, I think the COVID is still not gone there. As far as India is concerned, the government has set a target of vaccinating about the entire adult population by the end of this year. That seems like a tall order right now. That requires about 8 to 9 million vaccine doses per day. We are somewhere where the red dot is. I mean, the sustained vaccination rate is around 5.5 or so. And we believe that in the base case, 6 million doses per day would be possible, and that actually would vaccinate about 70% of the adult population by the end of this year. And our forecasts are based on this. Now, I think, so what has been the trajectory of the summary indicator of the economy, which is the GDP? You can very clearly see in this chart. So this is GDP is indexed to 100, I think, for the sake of communication. In the first quarter of last fiscal year, GDP had fallen very sharply by about 25% year on year. What I have plotted here is not year on year because I think it kind of misses out on what's actually happening on the ground. What matters is
what is happening vis-a-vis the last quarter. So we have sequential growth rates here. So sequentially also, the first quarter of last year was very poor performance. But after that, I think the GDP started improving and growth started improving, and the level of GDP by the fourth quarter of last fiscal year was actually almost equal to the pre-pandemic level. But after that, the second wave struck, and we expect sequentially again the GDP to come down, and it will follow two different paths. I think the red path is on the top, which is a base case of 9.5% GDP growth, and the gray path is a pessimistic scenario where I think we falter on vaccinations, and the third wave turns out to be extremely virulent. So this is broadly the path of the economy that we envisage. What we also have now is a variety of data to look at as to how the economy is playing out. I think what is very obvious from all that data is that although the second wave was very virulent, it actually brought the healthcare system to the brink. But despite that, the economy did not suffer to the extent it suffered in the first wave. And you can, I think, look at various indicators. I don't want to go through all of them, but I think it's very clearly visible that I think this is the first wave, April 20, and this is the first lockdown and the first wave, beginning of the first wave, and this is the second lockdown and the second beginning of and the second wave. We can very clearly see that the hit to mobility or to electricity consumption, or for that matter to manufacturing sector or services sector, was not that deep. I mean, as it was during the first wave, when actually the activity had come down very sharply. So I think the lesson there is that despite all the problems and uncertainties with respect to virus, the economy has been gradually improving, and our ability to live with the virus is also gradually beginning to improve, and that's getting reflected in the economic data. Having said that, I think the manufacturing sector is more resilient. The services sector, the contact-based services, are the ones which are bearing the brunt, because they are the ones where people exercise caution in consuming those services. Now, I was talking about initially when I was introducing the topic, I said that the visibility on incomes have also been hit, and that is reflected by the consumer confidence, which is captured through the RBI's quarterly surveys. And that, if you look at the blue line, I think this is showing the level of consumer confidence as per the latest survey done in July. And this is not only the lowest level ever, but it's also lower than, I think, almost lower than what it was during the first wave. So I think the consumer sentiment has been hit extremely hard. Not surprising, because the balance sheets of many households have also been hit, and the second wave actually was a very severe one, and I think it did hurt the sentiment. But if you look ahead, I think people are a little more optimistic that I think 1 year down the line things might improve. So I think improving sentiment is also key to improving the economy. Rural economy, which was a savior last year, is still a savior. The monsoons are reasonably good, I would say, and the agriculture output, except for maybe Gujarat and Odisha, looks to be normal. What is interesting here is that the food inflation has been quite soft this year compared to. I'm not talking about proteins, but in general, cereals, etc. The overall food inflation was 3.8% in the first 7 months of this calendar year, and the non-food inflation was around 6.2%. So now, what does this mean? Last year we saw food inflation close to 9.6% and non-food being lower. So from a farmer's perspective, the product that he sells, which is agriculture, which is food, I think is not growing. The prices are not growing that fast, as I think the non-food prices are growing. So what he sells is growing at a slower pace. What he buys is growing at a higher pace. I mean, so inflation is higher in what he buys. So in a way, crunches the purchasing power, at least of many of the farmers. And this is quite different from what happened last year. We've also seen the balance sheets being hit, which I talked about. The government spending, I think, which is Manrega for rural areas, is somewhat lower than what it was last year. So clearly, I think I would not say that the rural engine is not operative, but it's less operative than last year. Now coming to inflation, which is a big bugbear and which will influence how the monetary policy particularly plays out. You can very clearly see how sharp the rise in the wholesale price index inflation has been, which essentially reflects the input prices for many of the commodities that the industry uses. And the second one is the retail prices marked in the chart in the blue. And the retail prices we can see are somewhat softer, but I think they are above the RBI's tolerance band. I think because of the base effect, the inflation did come down somewhat, but inflation remains a challenge because if the producers are passing on the input cost to the end consumer, even in a scenario where demand is weak. So if demand were to pick up going ahead as is expected, I think the inflation could emerge as a problem. So keep your fingers crossed on inflation, and RBI has already raised its inflation forecast. So what it means is that RBI's ability to support the economy through interest rate cuts, I think will become constrained. So people have started looking towards fiscal policy, which I'll come to in a minute. And also, I think not only is the inflation high, but expectation of inflation is also high. So people do believe that the 3 month ahead, 1 year ahead inflation is going to remain high. So that behavior also, I think, makes the inflation a bit of a worry, so to say. Now, coming to the policy side, which I had mentioned earlier, that is one variable which we can influence. So central bank has done all it could. I think it has boosted liquidity for the segments that require it the most. They've been, I think, focused on credit availability to the small and medium enterprises, etc., and also some of the services. But I think the RBI will now have to start normalizing its super easy monetary policy. And I think we believe that they could be raising interest rates, not immediately, but probably by the end of the year. So they'll do it in signal it in two ways. I mean, one is they will have to change the stance, which is accommodative right now, which means super easy policy, to neutral, and then I think they could follow it by a rate hike. On the fiscal policy, it's not that the government hasn't done much. I think they have done, but I think most of the spending is below the line. I mean, it's not above the line. So what I mean by that is that they're giving guarantees for getting loans, etc., rather than directly spending money, which that part is a little weaker here compared to what the rest of the world, particularly the richer countries, have done. Also, I think the Manrega spending, we believe, might have to be raised from what has been budgeted, and I think you need additional funds for ramping up health infrastructure. Here, I just want to mention that the services sector, particularly in the urban areas, where I think 73% of the contact-based services in India are in urban areas, and I think there, what we find is that the whether it is the schools remaining closed and the associated services, maybe the buses that run for the school, I think, and people employed there. So similarly, you can find many other pain points in the urban areas, which I think require government to maybe provide above the line support to these segments. And I think that is what people are looking up to as far as the fiscal policy is concerned. Monetary policy, I think, has more or less done its job. Now, I think I just want to spend a minute looking beyond what is happening currently. This is what you see in the chart is 3-year forecast on the economy. This year, we expect 9.5% growth. Next year, we still expect good growth, around 7.8%. And the reason is that what will happen by the time we step into the next fiscal year is that we probably would have vaccinated effectively, and we would be in a better position to open up the services sector. So there'll be a surge in demand for many of the services, which is called the pent-up demand. So growth will remain high next year, next fiscal as well. Then I think the pent-up demand will dissipate and the reality will bite and the growth will come down from those levels. But I think we still believe that the medium-term trajectory is reasonably healthy. Now, I think coming to what it means. So, I mean, is it sufficient to wipe out the losses of growth, losses of income during the pandemic? It's clearly not. I mean, if there were no pandemic, the GDP levels would have been expanding in following this blue line that you see. Now, what the pandemic did was it brought the level of GDP down in FY21, 7.3% below what it was in 1920. And it will follow this path, the dashed line, which is in red color, which is equivalent to, which is similar to the path that that the pre-COVID trend line was. But I think the notable difference is that there's a gap between the two. So you will grow at the same in the same direction, maybe at the same rate, but will not be able to catch up with what the GDP would have been without the pandemic. This is referred to as the permanent loss, which we estimate at around 10% of GDP. The economic survey last year had also estimated it around 9 to 11%, I think, range. So this is fairly given. I think you can only erase it if you grow at around 12 to 13%. Now that was the medium run. Now there are many challenges that that we face. The pandemic has given a boost to technology. It has given a boost to some of the segments, e-commerce, etc. And there is a dearth of people. I think there is a skill mismatch there. People are getting phenomenal salaries, particularly in technology segment, because the need for that has increased. But at the same time, there's a large army of unskilled people who I think are unemployable people. I think who are on the other side. And I think the pandemic made this challenge even more binding. In the next 10 years, we will see about 100 million people come into the workforce and they would seek employment. So I think from an employment perspective, the pandemic has provided a hit, and I think this has also opened up opportunities, but they are in the segments which are technology driven, etc., where I think employment opportunity is not that much. Businesses, I think, have to prepare for the pandemics in future, because it's predicted that the pandemics are not going to go away, and they will need to prepare with shorter time response to big business exigencies. And also, I think they'll have to focus more on sustainability, which is a term which I heard, I think, some time back on tax sustainability, but business sustainability, not merely on the profits. I mean, and finally, I think this pandemic has been a big wake-up call for revamping the healthcare segment, which was generally neglected. People were focused on getting more focused on the lifestyle diseases, and now I think we have another can of worms, which is the infectious diseases, where I think a lot of energy will have to be focused on. So I think I don't want to end on a pessimistic note. I think but the point is, these are some of the realities. The economy will do well, I think, and probably will remain one of the faster growing economies even with this scenario. There are some rays of hope coming from the PLI scheme, which I think government had launched. It can push manufacturing sector activity up, and there are already some positive signs of that. And finally, the infrastructure focus, where I think government plays a much bigger role than the private sector. I think the infrastructure focus of the government means that the ability of the economy to grow faster or sustain growth will improve. I mean, it does not only gives immediate push to the economy, but also raises the potential over the medium run. And I think these two monitorables need to be very closely watched. So with that, this is the end of my presentation, and I thank you all for listening very patiently.
Joshi, for your presentation and sharing your deep insights. And now I would like to request the chair for the session, Mr. A.N. Jha, to please share his special comments.
Good afternoon to all of you. I must thank Dr. Joshi for a very comprehensive presentation on the challenges that are there for the Indian economy, the prospects which lie ahead, and how he sees it will unfold. He has very succinctly brought out the issues, the challenges, and the interplay of the monetary and the fiscal policies as we go forward, the growth challenges, where and how we got hit, and where we move ahead in terms of the next 4 or 5 years that are there in the medium term. Two important points which he has highlighted and flagged are the level of confidence, the level of consumer confidence that prevails, and how the pandemic has affected it. Because ultimately, it will be the consumer confidence which will drive a lot of engines of growth as we go forward, as well as the inflation uncertainty that lies ahead of us. We are already at the threshold of what the RBI holds as the upper limit of the inflation index of 4 to 6%, and how much that will move and where it will move is something which we will have to wait and watch very carefully. 2 points that I would like to highlight here is on the importance of fiscal policy, which Dr. Joshi very rightly pointed out. I think there is some inherent challenges which I perceive lie before the government. One, of course, is the very large fiscal deficit that already exists for the central government. It has been existing even before the pandemic, because we saw 2 years of, rather 3 years of decline in growth prospects of the economy from 2017 onwards, where the GDP has been on a declining slope. So the economy was struggling when the pandemic hit, and the impact of the pandemic, as he has very rightly pointed out, has been very, very severe on the growth prospects. So how much of fiscal interplay does the government have, the central government have, is extremely crucial, because last year we saw almost 10% of GDP being the fiscal deficit of the central government, plus another 4 to 5% of the state governments. Here, I just wanted to flag an important point, which is the role which the state governments play, because the state governments actually control almost 63% of the total public expenditure that takes place between the center and the states combined. So how much is the scope over there, and whether they are utilizing the full fiscal space that is available? And recent studies have indicated that the state budgets themselves are short of what would be an optimum level of fiscal space that they can utilize. And that's where I think the kick-in needs to come in. The second issue which fiscal policy has to keep in mind perhaps is the inflation prospects, because with money supply, etc., being at its all-time high, plus the monetary policy having exhausted its limit, if the fisc also adds to that, whether it will give a further inflationary push to the economy will be something on which Dr. Joshi and experts like him would certainly be looking at. But I must compliment him again for a wonderful presentation. He has captured the essence of the challenges and the path which we all foresee for the future. And here again, it's very important. I just wanted to flag in the context of today's prize distribution ceremony and the role which TIOL plays is the importance of tax revenues. Because India's tax revenues, as all of you know, has been almost stagnant at tax GDP ratio has been almost stagnant over the last 20-30 years. It hovers around 10 to 11%, and the pandemic has further made a dent on it. And how we wish to raise that limit, whether it can be raised and to what extent we can go, will have a large role in the shape of the expenditure prospects and the fiscal policy prospects, which the country will have to look at in the medium term. And therefore, this type of initiative which TIOL has taken is extremely important. And I wish to compliment them and thank them for the opportunity they have given me. Thank you very much. And especially Dr. Joshi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. A.N. Shah, that was former Finance Secretary and member of the 15th Finance Commission, sharing his special observations on the first session of the TIOL Tax Congress. Thank you so much, Mr. Jha, for sparing time for the Congress and staying back. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we move towards the second session of the TIOL Congress. Our second session is on international taxation, global minimum tax and digital taxation. Before I introduce my speakers on the session, I would like to request Mr. G.C. Srivastava, practicing advocate and former Director General of International Taxation, CBDT, to please join the dais and chair the session. So would you like to sit here and watch? Sorry? Yes, they're here. G. To take this session forward, we have a video all the way from Netherlands from Professor Pasquale Pistone, who is the academic chairman of IBFT Netherlands. He holds a Jarmone ad personam chair in European tax law and policy at WU Vienna, Austria, and is habilitated as full professor of tax law in Italy. He is editor-in-chief of IBFT's World Tax Journal, International Tax Studies, doctoral series, and global tax treaty commentaries. Professor Dr. Pistone is also co-director of IBFT's Observatory for the Protection of Taxpayers' Rights, co-chair of the Tax Committee of the International Law Association, secretary of the Executive Board of the European Association of Tax Law Professors, a member of the Permanent Scientific Committee of the International Fiscal Association. Let's take a look at this very special video all the way from Netherlands.
My name is Pasquale Pistone and I'm the academic chairman of the IBFD, as well as a professor at the WU Vienna University of Economics and Business and at the University of Salerno. I'm extremely sorry for not being there with you due to travel restrictions, and at the same time, this is the time of my long summer holidays, but I really wanted to be at least with you by sending you this video recorded message. I would like to thank Mr. Shailendra Kumar for the invitation and for organizing this interesting event, and also my friend DP Sengupta to make all this possible. I present my regards to the chair of this session, Mr. Singh, and also to Mr. Akhilesh Ranjan, who will be speaking after me. The focus of my presentation is related to the topic of the session, which is on digital taxation and global minimum tax. I want to say that during my presentation, I will be referring to turnover taxes, but when I refer to turnover taxes, I will not be referring to GST or VAT, but I will look at turnover taxes as a proxy for value creation, being the other proxy income. And this is why I think it's important to clarify this, because when you hear me referring to turnover tax, I intend, in fact, to refer to taxes which are similar to digital services tax. So my presentation focuses on 4 points, and those 4 points, I want to mention them right now, and then I want to make a brief introduction, and then I will address them. The first point of my presentation is on the legitimacy of the international tax nexus on business. This is what has started creating the problem, because of the fact that business models have dramatically changed, and we haven't been able to change the international tax nexus accordingly. The second point focuses on GLOBE, and GLOBE is certainly particularly important within the framework of my presentation, because I would like to address the potential implications arising from the establishment of an international minimum standard of income taxation, both from the perspective of legitimacy, this is actually the second point of my presentation, and from the implications for tax competition. And then I will close my presentation with some remarks on inter-country equity and the potential developments that could take place in the future. Now, let me start by introducing my remarks. And I would like to say that I am a strong believer in international tax coordination. I think that global problems require global answers. And balanced solutions require a fair participation of the different countries around the world to establish a reform of international taxation at the time of global tax governance. Global tax governance doesn't mean that some countries rule the world by imposing their tax conditions, but global tax governance means that it is, there is a need for legitimacy. And this is important, in my view. Even informal fora, such as G20, are giving an opportunity to look at what is desirable for a number of countries and also, implementing this around the world. But still, 20 countries around the world do not rule the world. So we have to avoid that. Instead of having, a few countries, we have 20 countries ruling the world. G20 is just important to convey international tax coordination. Good reform of international taxation requires balanced and fair solutions. And these is what will make them last for years. We know that for about 100 years, we have been essentially having the same structure of international taxation, which has been relying on a tax nexus. The starting tax nexus is the objective nexus, which looks at where wealth is produced, and in this case, if we talk about income taxation, where income is produced, where income is sourced, that country has taxing rights. But in parallel with this, we have been seeing the development of the personal nexus, and the personal nexus can be questioned because of the fact that it, number one, creates double taxation, but at the same time, it also stretches the taxing jurisdiction of some countries beyond their boundaries. It has been justified from various perspectives, including the economic ones and including based on capital export neutrality for some countries or corresponding mechanisms of capital import neutrality. This is not the place where we should address those issues. I think that for the time being, we should be aware that the legitimacy of the current international tax nexus is faltering. So from this perspective, I suggest that we consider that the problems of international taxation are problems essentially related to nexus. In the framework of the International Law Association, just about to start a new research activity, which is trying to discover from the perspective of public international law how we can reform the current international tax nexus. And I think that we should be quite frank in saying that right now, the boundaries, the physical boundaries of the concept of permanent establishment are basically turning permanent establishment into a cage for the exercise of taxing rights by the so-called market state when there is potentially a significant economic presence on the territory of a country and there is no physical presence of business as such, or we have a very limited risk run in what we can call the market state, or the state where there will be no people. Now, this is what needs to be reformed. Do we want to reform it by looking at solutions within income taxation, or shall we abandon income taxation and go for other forms of taxation instead? What we have seen across the past couple of years has been a blossoming of turnover taxation. But this was the unavoidable consequence of the fact that in the so-called first phase of the BEPS project, there was no possibility to strike a fair balance on the allocation of taxing powers on action 1 of the so-called digital economy action of the BEPS project. And this is what has brought countries to say, well, if you don't want to allocate taxing rights to countries where there is a significant economic presence and there is no actual presence of business, or there is a limited risk from there, then you know what, we will anyway exercise our taxing powers by reference to alternative means, the most important of which is digital services taxation. Basically, instead of taxing value creation using the proxy income, we tax value creation using the proxy turnover. And we have seen that this is an important reality right now. So right now for business, this creates a sort of parallel world, because in the absence of a permanent establishment in the market state, they pay taxes on income in their country of residence, and in the market state, they pay taxes on their turnover. That's unacceptable. I mean, I say that if there is a tug of war between two blocks of countries, or maybe between the United States on the one side and all other countries on the other side, I think that it's unacceptable that business has to pay the price, and it's unacceptable that countries are de facto deprived of their rights to collect and levy and collect taxes on business exercised or exploiting their territory. Now, this is important. We need to reform. And as I said, we have two options. One is reforming the PE concept and reforming income taxation. And the other one is using other taxes instead. But whichever way we go, we need to achieve coordination. And I will get back to this on my fourth point, which is on inter-country equity. Now, let me focus on GLOBE, and I will address GLOBE from the perspective of its legitimacy and from the perspective of implications for tax competition. From the perspective of legitimacy, the first point is, do countries have the right to exercise their taxing powers on income that is not sufficiently taxed in another country? Well, the answer is yes. If there is a global agreement on the establishment of a minimum taxation on business profits, which basically sets out a goal to prevent the so-called race to the bottom, but preventing the race to the bottom is right now an important way to address a problem that hasn't been solved so far, because the fact that we have tax competition has in fact allowed some countries to push it to the limits and the boundaries of what can be acceptable, and therefore some companies have been finding a shelter under the taxing jurisdiction of some countries, and in fact this creates a systematic vulnerability of the whole global system. So if this is a globally desirable goal, then countries can actually enforce that based on an agreement that allows them to do so. We do not know yet what could be the rate of GLOBE. We do not know yet whether it will be just related to harmful tax competition regimes or will apply on an overall basis. I want to say that drawing a dividing line between what can be harmful competition and what is perhaps genuine practices make the system more complex to operate across the countries. And I feel that somehow there will be a sort of general scope for all business profits of GLOBE. So let's assume that this is the case, and let's assume that there will be a situation in which we have we can have a minimum income taxation, could be 15% or whatever. But what happens at this times, I think it's important that we don't forget that the desirability of removing all possible tax shelters for multinational enterprises not to pay taxes is not the only goal of global tax governance. Right now, we are still in times of global COVID crisis, the pandemics, and therefore we should not forget, we ought not to forget that taxes can be used for regulatory purposes. Now, we can discuss as to whether tax incentives are efficient or not. The economic studies have been, looking at the impact on foreign direct investment in the past, but at the same time, we know that the data that have been used to reach conclusions were collected at the time in which there was no real tax transparency, and it could be easy to root out of a country some income. Therefore, I think that maybe further consideration is needed in this respect. But let's make one point. If countries do want to pursue regulatory purposes with taxation and granting tax incentives for genuine purposes, what happens? What happens, and here we go into the tax competition part, what happens is that some countries, because of GLOBE, will in fact be making a sacrifice, and the other country can levy its taxes on top of the ones that were levied by the country that is granted the tax incentive. Is this what we want? Maybe yes, but what happens if we don't, if we don't apply this GLOBE also domestically? It may create a bias in favor of investing domestically, because if a state grants tax incentive and lowers its taxes, for instance, on profits, then the investor domestically can get the tax advantages, but across the borders there will be no such situation, because the state of residence will systematically use GLOBE to compensate lower taxation in the country of source. So this is not acceptable, and I think that this is a situation that can also create some major repercussions between countries importing capital and countries exporting capital, having enough capital to be used domestically, and at the same time also I think that there will be a situation also among OECD countries between the big countries and the small countries, because the small countries normally import the capital. So I think that we should really seriously consider this. What's the best way out of this? Is it creating carve-outs for some fields? I'm not sure that carve-outs are a good idea, because carve-outs are often the outcome of lobbying done by some groups of pressure, and I think that perhaps we should consider that a proper balance of what is allocated to the market state by acting on the so-called first pillar is perhaps the right way out. But at the same time, I think that what is most important is to understand that the overall application of GLOBE should take place in a context which preserves inter-nation equity. And this is something which, in my view, is perhaps the top priority. No real reform can last for long if it's not fair. And fairness is this time among the countries, because some countries want to tax more and some countries want to tax less. I think that from the perspective of developing countries, the right to pursue economic development, and in this case of COVID crisis, to reactivate the economy, is priority number one. It's fair that those countries have the conditions to import the capital that is needed to that, for that goal, for pursuing that goal, and therefore GLOBE should not turn into an obstacle for doing that. But if we think about international agreements like TRIPS and transfer of technology with tax incentive to developing countries, that is something which has creates international obligation. I could continue with the so-called tax sparing clauses. So there is no right of countries to compensate for lower taxation. So I think that when we talk about the potential implications of GLOBE, we should consider that the international instrument that will implement GLOBE should also take into account that if some countries levy taxes on turnover instead of income, we can't accept that GLOBE compensate lower income taxation, and then on top we have this turnover taxation. All this shows the importance of international tax coordination through agreements, which are absolutely indispensable to achieve a fair solution to the problems of global tax governance. And digital services taxation should therefore be not a battlefield, but rather a laboratory for finding the correct coordination across the world. Thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Pasquale Pistone, for the detailed perspective on international taxation. Before I move on to our next speaker for the session, I would like to request all the guests who are standing at the back to please occupy the seats for the rest of the Congress. And also, if we have guests who can hear me right now who are outside the door, please, if you could join us back in the hall and attend the rest of the Congress with us. That'll be really nice. Thank you so much. Moving on with the second speaker of the session on international taxation, global minimum tax, and digital taxation, I would like now to request Mr. Akhilesh Ranjan to take the session forward. Mr. Ranjan is an IRS officer from Income Tax, retired as the member of the Central Board of Director Taxes in the Ministry of Finance, is widely acknowledged in India and abroad for his special knack and expertise in the domain of international taxation. Not just that, he also led the Indian team for several critical international treaties, negotiations, and OECD talks on behalf of Government of India during his tenure in the board. Thank you so much, Mr. Ranjan, for making time for joining us today. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. And a very good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure always to be with the Tax India Online. I have been associated with this journal for a very, very, very long time. I congratulate Mr. Shailendra Kumar and his team and the TIOL Foundation for this award ceremony and for this very great event. So the topic that I'm supposed to speak on is on global minimum tax and on digital tax. And I think this subject has been chosen because of a very recent international agreement announced by the OECD on the 1st of July on two aspects. One, on the levy of a global minimum tax, which means that all multinational enterprises have to pay a certain minimum tax on their profits, and on a means to meet the challenges of the digitalized economy. Now, Now, this agreement, which of course has been announced, there's a consensus between 130 countries odd. It has been presented as a package of minimum tax along with the digital tax, a package which is supposed to transform the world of tax and the world in general. It has been hailed as something which will bring about stability of the international tax system, fairness of the international tax system. It has been hailed as an answer to the problems of digitalization or the solutions for digital tax. In fact, the Chancellor of the Exchequer of the UK, Mr. Rishi Sunak, has gone on record by saying that we have now achieved a state of nirvana in international tax, and that now the right companies will pay the right amount of tax in the right place. And what I would like to speak about in the next 10 20 minutes is whether we have actually achieved that, whether the international community has really achieved stability, fairness, or is it an important step and directed towards larger goals in the future? Is it justified to say that we have achieved nirvana, or is it an admission that we have to conquer many difficulties still in the road to achieve a fair tax system? So, very briefly, what is this whole agreement about? It's centered on two streams of work, which are referred to commonly as the Pillar 1 and the Pillar 2 work. The Pillar 1 dealing with the challenges of the digitalized economy, and Pillar 2 dealing with the global minimum tax. These two streams actually are independent streams. There is a very tenuous connection between the two, although they have been presented as a major international package. Pillar 1 essentially talks about reallocating income or a certain portion of super profits earned by multinationals to market jurisdictions, even if there is no physical presence of the M&E in that market jurisdiction. It's important because the concept of physical presence has been whittled down. And then Pillar 1 also talks about a grant of a taxation right to these market economies, where they will be able to tax this reallocated profit of the multinationals. Pillar 2 then, of course, it talks about only a global minimum tax. It says that every multinational enterprise will pay a certain minimum amount of tax on the profits that it earns in each jurisdiction or each country that it operates in. So where is the connection? The connection could only be that, yes, because of the digitalized economy, companies were able to park profits in different locations in where the taxation levels were lower, or there was no taxation. And probably when you take both of these proposals in combined effect of them will be that it will achieve a more fair system of taxation worldwide. So as I said, what level have we reached? Have we really solved all the problems? I think one must recognize that there are major, very significant changes introduced by this agreement. And there are three main areas that I would like to highlight where this new agreement has the potential of making a difference. The first is the impact on sovereignty. We heard Professor Pistone talking about whether it is proper for one country to tax profits that are accrued in another country, just because the other country does not levy a tax on those profits. Well, I'm not on the subject of legitimacy, but what I'm trying to say is that the whole concept that every nation has a sovereign right to tax its residents is impacted. The proposal of global minimum tax does not require countries to raise their tax rates, does not require them to even sign on to the agreement. But when you say that a country in which a parent company is headquartered has the right to tax income which is arising in another jurisdiction, in another country, and that country does not choose to tax it, but yet you want to tax it and you are allowed to tax it, I mean, that's something which is impinging on sovereignty. Leaving aside the issue of legitimacy, as I said, what it really signifies is the tax policy now has become increasingly multilateral. As again, I found those statements very incisive of Professor Pistone. He said that once countries have agreed, then everything becomes legitimate. And that's true, that countries have agreed to that, that this sort of system will work. But then what it really means is that domestic tax policies cannot remain isolationist any longer. No country can chart its own path any longer in tax policy. Countries will have to look at the international and global environment. Multilateral agreements will increasingly try and influence in domestic tax policy, and that's one of the significant outcomes of this new agreement. Whether it is good or bad is for the times to come to tell us. Perhaps a degree of multilateralism is required to bring about that fairness in tax systems that we are all talking about. The second major change, the second significant event, is that this solution or this new consensus recognizes the importance of markets in the generation of profits. The rules of international taxation, which we have been living with for the last 100 years, were framed by the League of Nations in the 1920s. And when they sat down to allocate taxing rights or how income would be allocated, they relied on the theory of economic allegiance, which is all very fine. The theory, there is nothing wrong with that. But then they proceeded to define economic allegiance by referring to the ownership of capital, the ownership of wealth, the ownership of the means of production and supply, because that's what the world was at that time. A few industrialized countries who were controlling the means of production and supply, and the colonies where these goods and services were being sold. So, allocation rules as laid down by the League of Nations always then relied on these factors, which were supply side factors always. They never considered the role of markets. And now what we have is a solution where, for finally, because of the digital disruption, because of various other changes in the way businesses are operating, it has now been agreed that markets do contribute. That some part of the profits of multinationals, if they have achieved a certain level of turnover, if they have achieved a certain level of profitability, then some part of their profits must be ascribed to the role of markets, and therefore some part of the profits must be allocated to those markets, even if there is no subsidiary in those marketplace jurisdictions, even if there is no branch or office in that market. So that's a change, a very significant change in the way we think of allocation of income. What was laid down 100 years ago has been modified to a large extent, and this is something that we can only travel further or progress further on the road. The third significant point is that when we talk about the methods of allocation of income, once again, the global community, the OECD in particular, formulated transfer pricing guidelines as the solution for allocating income. The 1995 guidelines laid down a whole system by which the arm's length standard would govern the allocation of income amongst different entities in different jurisdictions. But this allocation system, again, was dependent on the same factors which the overall international tax architecture was based on: the production, on the supply of goods, on the intangibles owned by the producer, on the functions that were carried out by the producer. And therefore, traditional transfer pricing has never taken into account the contribution of markets or the contribution of demand forces in any jurisdiction, and has only concentrated on the supply side of factors. So here, and then the arm's length principle, the arm's length standard, which is on which transfer pricing is based almost entirely, goes along with the separate entity principle, which essentially means that every entity, every subsidiary, every small company is an entity by itself, and you can allocate only so much of income to that entity which is justified by the functions that it performs, the assets that it uses, and the risks that it assumes. And this will be regardless of what globally is the profit earned by that multinational enterprise. So the separate entity principle takes each entity away from the global picture and applies the transfer pricing rules on that. This concept of separate entity principle and the accompanying arm's length standard is once again something which has changed in this new solution. What we have now is a system where a consolidated profit figure will be arrived at, a consolidated profit of a multinational of all its operations all over the world. And then that consolidated profit, a part of that profit will be taken out as residual profit. And a part of that residual profit will then be allocated again on a formula-based approach. So there is no concept now of an arm's length standard. The principle or the separate entity principle has been given a go by. We are now looking at consolidated incomes or profits of a multinational and allocating it according to sales made in different jurisdictions. And therefore, a major departure from what has been traditionally accepted as the best way of allocating income through transfer pricing. So this again is a change which is going to dictate many changes, further changes in the times to come. Already there is the European Union which is talking about now about a plan for business taxation in Europe. It is now very seriously considering a system where profits will in Europe of each entity of each multinational will be consolidated and allocated amongst countries on a formulaic basis, regardless of what actually is the profit earned in each country. We have already the states of the United States of America, which are already following this system of formulary apportionment of income. So a major change which is coming up which has now been recognized and accepted and given a seal of approval by this new agreement on international tax. So these are, I think, the three major issues which I think we should all take note of, which do mean significant progress in taxation, in reforming the world of international tax. How do they really affect? Do they really bring about stability? Do they really bring about fairness? That's something which one can have many different views on. India and most of the developing world would say that it is still not a fair and equitable system. What we had started out was trying to get adequate amount of tax from highly digitalized business models, which could earn massive profits by using the data that was contributed by the users and could therefore exploit market jurisdictions and earn profits without having a physical presence. Now, those issues, those challenges have not been addressed. What is the contribution or the importance of data has not been addressed. What is the difference between a digitalized business model and a normal distribution model has not been addressed. So there are many things that can be said that the system is still not fair. The system still needs to evolve. And certainly cannot be said that we have achieved nirvana in international taxation. I think there is hope for the future. There is a definite progress made on these counts. There is the upcoming ESG agenda, the environment, social and governance agenda. And I'm not talking about environment taxes, but the ESG agenda as a whole is based on the concept of fairness in taxation, a system which can generate sustainable tax revenues, and that's a term we have been hearing off and on in this morning and afternoon. But yes, that's the road for the future, system that can lead to sustainable tax revenues. And that sort of a fair system can be achieved only if we travel much further on this road and try to address the issues that Professor Pistione has been mentioning, the concept of nexus, the concept of allocation of income according to a fair and equitable standard. that's where I would like to end. And as I said, there has been considerable work done. There is considerable work required to be done. But I think momentous changes in the world of tax. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ranjan, for sharing your valuable insights. And it's time I request the chair of the session, Mr. GC Srivastava, to please come on the dais and share his special observations about the session.
Friends, after such a really critical exposition of these proposals by Mr. Akhilesh Ranjan, and also by Mr. There is hardly left anything to say, but one I just like to say. So one thing that really this year 2021 seems to be the year for very significant path-breaking changes, be it the withdrawal of the retrospective amendment in domestic legislation, or this is going to come. See, I recall distinctly that India was one of the first countries which has gone into the question of electronic commerce and digital. And the High Power Committee on Electronic Commerce submitted its report way back in somewhere around 99 or 2000. And when this report was presented to OECD in one of its meetings, and I was there to present that meeting, and I vividly recall the degree of resistance that was there in the group, barring some bit of support from a couple of countries, and let me not name them. The rest was hostile. And the argument was that if the multinationals are not using the infrastructure of your country, then how do you get the right to tax? I'm not physically present there. I don't use your economic infrastructure. I don't use your social infrastructure. Then how do you get the right of tax? So the right of taxation was dependent on the use of the infrastructure. And that's what physical presence virtually meant. And that concept of the permanent establishment, which worked for, as he pointed out, Mr. Akhilesh, worked for close to a century. Now, the best thing is, now that is getting recognized that with the growth of technology, that is not workable. So the permanence of permanent establishment is gone. And that is one good sign I see into it. Because that could not have worked, and that did not work. So all complications arose because of that, whether it be on the characterization of income, on the taxation of income, and so many other issues, even intangibles on that part. So therefore, I really welcome this change, and I know there are limitations, but I am certain that once as a concept it is recognized that physical presence is not a necessary element for getting the other country right to tax. And then a global consensus is required, the multilateral arrangements. If these are recognized, then I think, yes, a lot of battle is won. And I believe the rest will follow in the years to come. Because even in 2001 meeting, I recall that there was a faint suggestion of formulary apportionment, even at that stage. So either we had that stage, the talk was either you have virtual PE concept, you have a virtual PE concept, or you have formulary apportionment. So now once that formulary apportionment in principle is getting recognized, yes, the formula may not be correct, may need some improvements. Still, it's a welcome move, and I believe that should work. With the times, one more session to go. I don't want to deal further. Thank you very much, and I must compliment Shalin and TIOL team for a beautiful organization of this award function and also this congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. G.C. Srivastava, former Director General of International Taxation, CBDT, Ministry of Finance, for chairing this session. And now we move on to third and final session of this TIOL Tax Congress. This session is on, is Indian GST still on track? To chair this session, we are being joined virtually by a very special guest, that Mr. N. Venkatraman, Additional Solicitor General of India. A senior advocate in Supreme Court of India. He is, of course, the Additional Solicitor General of India, as I mentioned. He is a noted jurist in taxation and commercial law and one of the most sought-after counsels in the Supreme Court. Mr. Venkatraman is one of the youngest advocates to be designated as a senior advocate in the year 2006 at an early age of 39. He is one of the finest exponents of GST laws in India. We are very honored to have him join virtually for this session. So he will be here listening to both the speakers who would be presenting a part of this session today, starting with Mr. Prateek Jain. I would like to invite Mr. Prateek Jain first, who's a chartered accountant and a veteran in the industry in terms of experience and expertise, particularly in the domain of goods and services tax and customs. He's presently partner, PricewaterhouseCoopers at Gurgaon location. Please welcome Mr. Prateek Jain.
Thank you. And I have just put my stopwatch on. I'll not take more than 10-12 minutes. It's a topic which could take forever, right? Whether GST is on track, the debate is still out. But I'll just mention that, maybe let's start by saying that when GST came in, what were the key expectations? I think the mistake that we make very often is we compare GST of 2021 with what was happening in 20 and what was happening in 19, and not. Okay, Mr. Ram is saying something, or okay. So there were three key expectations from a reform like GST, right? One is simplicity, second is stability, and third is transparency. And perhaps I will just allude upon a bit in these three categories that what I believe we have achieved, and we have phenomenal achievement to look at if we look at last 4 or 5 years. Starting with simplicity, one nation, one tax. There were different tax laws in different states. There were Form C and Form D, and there were supply chain obstacles. When we work with large multinational corporations and other Indian corporations, the pricing was a challenge. IT systems were a huge challenge. And I had to align my business in accordance with tax laws. So I had to have warehouses in different states because there was a CST which used to operate, and I used to do work on a stock transfer model. So what GST, to my mind, has achieved is a significant improvement in ease of doing business, clearly. Supply chain has become more efficient. There are empirical data now available that 25 to 30% reduction in time taken from movement of goods from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, for example. So clearly that's one area. From a business standpoint, my pricing has become simpler because all states have one tax rate. IT systems have become much more simpler. And all of that is reflected by the World Bank ranking that we have seen a significant improvement on since GST has come in. And I think that trend is going to continue. The second aspect, which we very often miss, is the physical interface with the department has reduced significantly. And for any tax system, a successful tax system, it is necessary that the interface between the taxpayer and tax administrator is more and more digital and less physical. So that's clearly one. Of course, we have moved a lot in that journey, but there are still few things which, to my mind, need to be looked at. One is the structural simplification. Of course, there's a lot of discussion about widening the tax base. Till the time petroleum products and land is outside GST, that means a significant portion of economy is still out, and we need to kind of look at that. That will take time, particularly the passenger fuel, but maybe things like ATF and natural gas we can start with. The second is the whole process of reconciliation of vendor payments when I claim the credit, and that is leading to a lot of litigation, a lot of disputes. As an assessee, it's very difficult for me to determine whether the vendor has paid tax or not, right? And so long as I have the tax invoice with valid tax, the question is really, why do we make the purchaser responsible for that? But that's more a policy decision. Third is the administrative simplification. I think this is the biggest one today when we look at, just like faceless assessment, which has come in income tax. Is it a good time to start thinking about faceless assessment under GST? Today, if I'm a service provider, let's say if I'm a telecom company, I have 28 different registration, different states. Different states will assess me differently. Center will assess me differently. Today, we have seen early signs of audits and assessments, and we have seen a lot of disparity in terms of the way different authorities are approaching this. Legislative simplification, I think, is a low-hanging fruit, really. Just to give you an illustration of input tax credit provision, today all the employee-related provision, expenses are not allowed. Can we look at as an option of assessee, for example, that I get 90% of the credit at my option? I don't want to go into the details of all expenses and scrutiny. I say based on my trend that I'll take 90% or 95% of the credit. So these are the things which are simple. Also, a lot of taxes that I pay and I claim a refund of later. We have global principles like EU. You don't pay under reverse charge and then claim a offset, just a debit and credit in the books. You don't pay tax and then claim a refund, right? So some of those things have to be looked at. Judicial part of it, and I think, of course, Mr. Venkatraman sir will perhaps allude upon that, is that a lot of work needs to be done. Advanced ruling as a principle, as a concept, has not been successful. Different states are taking different views. We are talking about National Advanced Ruling Authority. The tribunal has not yet set up. So for every commissioner order, I have to go to High Court at this point in time, and that's leading to a lot of issues. The second part, of course, is stability part of it. All of us know that initial 1 or 2 years, we really struggled in terms of technology, the GSTN. But look at the world-class infrastructure that we have created. I think a lot of people forget the kind of scale that we have achieved there. And now when we talk to global sort of companies and different governments, a lot of governments across the globe is looking at Indian model and looking at how do we implement e-invoicing, how do we implement reconciliation process, etc. 71.9 crore returns have been filed till now by 15th of August. And I think that's a significant achievement. It's not I think it's not a fluke, so to say. The tax base has expanded from 66 lakh assessees to 1.3 crore in last 4 years. And I think it's phenomenal. Even during the pandemic, consistently for last few months, barring 1 or 2 months here and there, we have achieved more than 1 lakh crore as a tax collection. All of that means that, and there's a lot of people who would say that for smaller businesses, GST has not been that great. And I think, but the data proves otherwise. And up to 40 lakh, of course, you don't have to pay GST, and then you have composition scheme and so on and so forth. Technology-driven compliance mechanism, we've spoken about that, but I think the newer concept like blockchain is going to come on e-audits and things like that. Artificial intelligence is going to come. User experience concepts are going to come. And I think government is far ahead from compared to industry in terms of technology. What are a couple of things that we can perhaps do in this area? One is, time has come to look at a white paper on GST, that what kind of GST do we want in next 5 years, in next 10 years and 15 years. I think government has done well that legislative changes have not been that frequent. Of course, there are tax rate changes and there are some few changes that have happened because, to take care of some judgments and things like that. But white paper, I think, is important. Rate structure, already work is on. I think it's going to be simplified. Just a matter of time. I'm not too bothered about the rate structure part of it. I think it's a process. But we have to note that the effective tax rate today is much lower than what you had before GST came in. And then, therefore, the prices, of course, have come down for most products and services. Introduction of facility of revision of return. I think those are the things which people have talked about a lot, which is required. The other point there on stability is the anti-profiting mechanism. And I think time has come to say goodbye to this, because already 4 years. Of course, today we don't have perhaps the chairman as well. But till what time do you want to impose a mechanism like anti-profiting? Every time the rate changes, the industry is not sure how do we do the pricing. Forget about the rate changes. Even if I get a credit which I was not getting earlier, there is already an issue. The last sort of segment that I'll talk about in not more than 1 minute is the transparency part of it. And this is also, I think, the great achievement of GST, that it has reduced the discretion available to the tax authorities. So GST Council is a body. Of course, most of the decisions have been taken by consensus. But earlier, any state could have just got up and said, I want to increase the tax rate, VAT rate on a particular product, right? Or reduce the VAT rate on a particular product. And that would mean that, I would have an opportunity to go and, lobby with a particular government. Now, all of that has stopped. A GST Council is a much more transparent body in that sense, right? You have minutes of the meeting, you have discussions, you have, deliberations. Media is covering that extensively. We know what is the logic, why a particular decision has been taken. So much more transparent system which has come. There are few things there which, of course, the government, and we have gone to the government and talked about it, is that we don't have a forum today where the industry can go and represent. Because GST Council has a lot of stakeholders. Of course, the central government. It has all the state governments. Of course, you have bureaucrats from belonging to the governments. You have various committees, fitment committees, and so on and so forth. We as an industry, we are not sure who to go to, right, and talk about it. So in between, there was a few sectoral committees which were constituted. I think it's time to kind of look at those committees again and provide a forum for the industry to come and talk about it. There is perhaps also a good time to introduce a one-time dispute settlement scheme under GST, because a lot of things have happened over the last 4 or 5 years, and perhaps industry deserves now an opportunity to pay whatever taxes, interest, etc. that they have not paid for want of clarity. Also, there has to be better sentence state coordination. Is one area where industry is really concerned about. Things like Kerala coming up with a cess, or a particular state saying that I will not sort of consider the circulars issued by the central government. I think where it is leading to, and one worry which a lot of us have is that when the GST compensation is gone, right, then will that be enough glue in the GST Council so that all the states will continue to work together? And that, I think, is important. So in conclusion, I would just say that if the topic is GST is the right track or not, all the empirical evidence, whether you look at from a government perspective, tax collections are going up, taxes getting widened. From a consumer perspective, they can see the taxes on the invoice. It has become much more simpler to do business. So GST is the right track. Have we achieved what we wanted to achieve? Let's say, when we started GST, perhaps not. And therefore, that's clearly, you can look at glass half full or glass empty, but directionally we are there, and the whole world is looking at us, and we should be proud of what we have created. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prateek Jain, for sharing industry's perspective on the Indian GST. Now, I would like to invite the next speaker for this session. That's Mr. S.K. Rahman, Principal Commissioner and former Joint Secretary, GST Council Secretariat. Mr. Rahman.
Dignitaries in the hall and dignitaries who are there online, and respected Chair Venkatraman sir. Very good afternoon to all of you. It's indeed an honor to be associated with Tax India Online, particularly on this occasion of TIOL Awards 2020. For the topic that is being discussed, Mr. Prateek has covered most of the issues, but to have a government perspective, I thought I'll just present it through a presentation. May I have the presentation? No, not this one. Second. This is not mine. No, this is not the presentation. My presentation is different. This is somebody else's presentation. I have been associated with GST right from the starting. 1st May 2017, I have been transferred to Delhi. I've been associated with it in the form of from DZGST, where we had extensive discussions with the stakeholders. Then I was also looking after SVLDRS, Sabka Vishwas Legacy Dispute Resolution scheme, to do away with central excess legacy and service tax difficulties. Then I joined GST Council Secretariat. So we were dealing with central government and 28 states. I mean, the entire journey, if you see, the highest credit and the biggest credit should go to the trade and industry, because they have joined us, they have borne the difficulties, they had the greatest resilience to come back and stay on track with GST. And in between, of course, you have seen for last 1.5 years, the COVID effect was also there. So if you see, summarize the entire thing, yes, what Mr. Pratik has said, what we wanted to achieve, probably we could not achieve. And I hope all of us agree our target should be something which is slightly higher than what we should have achieved. So otherwise we'll say, Sanya, we have achieved, everything is over. So looking at that, yes, it has been a difficult journey. And in this journey, the stakeholders are both government as well as the trade industry. It has been a good partnership. I mean, if you have noticed, the government has been listening, government has been amending notifications, government has been amending the even legislation, has been changing the laws and procedure. So that itself shows that, if you see when compared with central excise and service tax days, where we used to only make the changes once in a year, here we have been doing almost, every month as per the needs of the trade and industry, at the same time protecting the interest of the revenue. So I would be presenting you just the right from evolution, 4 or 5 themes where probably you will be able to understand the difficulties from the government perspective also. First one is about evolution of GST. If you have seen, yeah, by the time they make the thing ready, I'll continue. Evolution of GST, if you have seen, started almost 10 years before 2017. From the time the preparations have started, you can go to the first slide, please. To answer that question, whether we are on track or not, you'll be able to do it if you see slightly the background. 4 years, I mean, it has been 4 years, almost 50 days now. If you, this is yeah. Yeah. No, if you see the objectives of GST, yes, the broad objectives have been, ideal. We wanted to achieve a lot of things. I mean, one thing you would have seen that many of these objectives are partially achieved. If you see the journey of GST starting from, let's say, 2000 onwards, there have been a lot of meetings. I mean, a lot of persuasion had to be done with the state governments. A lot of preparation has to be done, as constitution has to be amended, and the new laws had to be brought both by central government and state government. I mean, it has been an hectic journey starting from almost 2000 to 2017. Finally, I mean, the 1st July 2017, the law has come. And even after that, we have continued with a lot of changes. If you have seen, major changes have come in November 2017. And during this period, we have been trying to amend the act a little bit, change the rules extensively, bring out a lot of clarificatory circulars. And if you have seen, 161 circular, so many notifications, so many groups of ministers had to work. I mean, so many subcommittees have to be formed. I mean, these are all the work that has gone. And in the result of that, if you see, as on 1st July, let us say there are around 1.28 crore taxpayers that are under the GST. There are around so many returns that have already been filed, around almost 70 crore returns. I mean, the amount of tax that has been collected is almost 10 to 12 lakh crores per annum for the last 4 years. And the amount of e-invoices issued, amount of invoices that have been raised, amount of returns that have been filed have been tremendous. Somehow it has been a very difficult task to achieve, but the numbers prove that yes, we have achieved to a certain extent. If you see the journey, it is not over. I mean, the journey continues because we are on the track, and this we are supposed to go long way. I mean, if you have seen prior to 30th June 2017, 18th meeting we had, post 1st July 2017, we had 26 meetings in 48 months. I mean, a total of 44 meetings in 4 years. I mean, GST Council, I have seen working in the GST Council Secretariat to convene a meeting, to prepare an agenda, to make agree people come along. And there's a lot of background that happens, works before this happens. So, there's a law committee meeting, there's a fitment committee meeting, all these people bring around, and then the consensus will arrive. Even the smallest opposition from any of the states till now would have been, it has been a very, very difficult task to convince them and to go along. And if you have seen a federal, it was kind of a unique federal handshake. I don't think anywhere in the Indian history, I mean, post-independence, it has happened, where the central government, along with 28 states and 3 union territories, sitting together and bringing about changes in the tax laws. If you have seen the earlier, if you quickly run through, let's say, if you compare for the last 4 years, if you quickly come through, we were not having service tax, we were having the VAT that has gone, we were having the excise duty, we were having the CST, all that has come and got merged into GST. If you have seen, it's a kind of unique federal body that has been created called, GST Council. And the main theme behind this is collaborative federalism. Every state and central government more or less has equal right to decide about it. And the strongest backbone is non-intrusive IT system. This IT system has given us a lot of strength to proceed further. Now, if you've seen salient features of GST as on date, if you look at it quickly, I will make a quick rush through. One is most important thing that I've seen at macroeconomic level is the formalization of economy. The unorganized sector, which was not there into the tax net, they have come into it and they have joined and they started enjoying the fruits of ITC. If you quickly run through 6 or 7 changes, the activity, if you can see, for a trader, importer, for a manufacturer, everybody has been brought into the same platform. If you see supply, whether it's a good supply, whether it's a services supply, both have been equalized. If you see it on the cost price, whether it is an intrastate supply or whether it is an intrastate supply, that has become equivalent to the GST. If you have seen number of branches of a companies, whether it was a interstate branches, everything has been neutralized in GST. If you have seen location wise, whether your factory is located in one state or in another state, it doesn't matter now. We have come onto the same platform. If you have seen offline, what we used to do, lot of business, lot of taxation related job, now we have brought onto the digital side. If you have seen the issues that have addressed, most of the issues I remember I have been associated with from almost July 2017, as I have seen, have been solved online. There was no other way. We started our journey on 1st July 2017. Issues coming along, we were trying to address them, we were trying to understand them, we were trying to solve them as much as possible. Like so many clarifications have been issued on the basic levy, valuation, place of supply, terms of supply, every kind of thing, time of supply, and special, SOPs have been brought also to address them. And if you see the entire process in the last 4 years, everybody has got some other thing. The government, the taxpayer, the consultants, the tax professionals, tax authorities, more or less everybody has got some other thing to, out of the GST introduced. Now, if you see quickly run through the changes, if you see the registered taxpayer, pre-GST to post-GST, you have seen the large numbers that have been added quickly one by one. If you've seen the compliance level, pre-GST compliance levels for manual, now we have come on to online. If you have seen returns, pre-GST, so many returns used to be there. Today, we have only 3B return and GST R1. If you have seen the authorities, pre-GST, so many authorities used to be there. Now we have only single authority, CGST, SGST. The e-way bill has come and it has removed all the checkposts. Whereas we used to have, lot of other difficulties with lot of state governments. Now we have only one e-way bill portal. If you come on to the ease of doing business, as you have seen, ease of doing business ranking used to be somewhere around 142 in 2014. Now it is, 2020, last time it was announced it was 63. GST to large extent has contributed for increasing the ease of doing business. You talk of registration, you talk of amendment or cancellation, it has become everything as online. If you talk of refund, that is completely online. There is no such any refund application that is being treated. If we talk of input tax credit, what we used to take earlier, now what we are doing, it has become completely seamless flow of credit. Of course, certain blockages would be there here and there. Tax rates, if you have seen different tax rates that are available, presently we are having a simpler 5 or 6 tax rates that are available. If you focus upon, let's say, ease of doing business alone, if you are seeing multiple returns to single return, if you are seeing multiple payment dates to single payment date, and if you see especially the growth of 142 to 130, 130 to 100, 77 to 63, if you take one of the factors as, let's say, paying of taxes as one of the criteria, then you can see that our criteria has been much better when compared to many of the countries in the world. I mean, the ease of doing ranking because of payment of taxes has also increased from 172 to 115. That's a better index. Now, if you talk of rate structure and rationalization, it's a continuous process. If you see starting, if 226 items used to be on 28% rate, but today, if you are seeing hardly there are around two only items, that is automobiles and cement. Even though there are mentioned around 20 items, small items that may or may not matter, the shrinking tax rate, I'm able to project it to you, are able to see that. The average rate, if you have seen pre-GST and post-GST, we are much less than what we are supposed to be. If you have seen 15.3%, if you have seen 14%, today we are around 11.6, which was much lesser than what has been actually recommended. If you have seen on revenue performance, more or less in initial few years, we were less than 1 lakh crores. We are not achieving what we are supposed to have achieved. Of course, big various factors, including macroeconomic factors, but looking at the GST trend in the last 8 months, we are not bad. I mean, we have been doing above 1 lakh crores. Only thing that has setback has happened was obviously the COVID that has struck. If you seen 1920 when compared to 2021 revenue, in April and August we had the biggest casualty, both in terms of course it was a national lockdown, and because of that our revenues would have got affected. Our revenue is an indication of economic activity in the country. Now, if you take a few initiatives that have been taken, which we are trying to do, of course the government is trying to do a lot, but some of them which I can showcase is obviously the QRMP scheme, that is quarterly return and monthly payment. We have also said a lot of changes have been brought on the composition scheme. And for the nil returns, it has been just you have to send an SMS saying that it's a nil return, and exemption limits that have been changed for the annual return as well as for the audit return have been very convenient to the taxpayers. If you have seen QRMP, I think it is slowly picking up. Certain modifications are required on that. If you are mentioning about e-invoices, I'm quickly rushing through because most of you are aware of that, but a quick refreshing of the memory obviously will change our attitude to see what exactly has happened and what may happen. If you are seeing e-invoicing, I mean 2017 we started, e-way bill we have introduced. Then if you see rule 36(4), we started with 20% variation to right now we have reduced it to 5%. If you're talking about e-invoices that have been introduced, is one of the successful thing that has happened in GST. Now only for B2B it has been running, I mean it's doing very well. And for QR code also we are introducing for B2C. Date has been announced, but we had to postpone because of the various factors. Now, if you see the return system also, even though it may look complicated, but if you are able to utilize e-invoicing system, then automatically the e-invoice data gets populated into GSTR1. Once you are clear about what is your outward supply, the data of GSTR1 is getting populated into GSTR3B, and you are able to file the return. And it's not very difficult if you start right from your e-invoice test. Now, there are difficulties from the government also. Some of the measures that we have taken, probably industry may be criticizing, industry may not be appreciating. They may think saying that why the government has to take, because you always remember trade facilitation and trade enforcement. I mean, law enforcement will have to balance each other. One has to balance these things to take care. So certain measures we have been introduced in last year. I mean, today, the very fact that 1 lakh crore revenue is coming per month is only because of these trade facilitation measures that have been introduced. Because you know very well the kind of fake invoicing, the kind of misutilization of ITC that has happened was tremendous, which was unbelievable. And looking at those, we had to introduce those changes. I hope, I mean, I should thank the trade for bearing with us and, trying to accept those changes. But looking at the trade facilitation side also, if you've seen, during especially COVID-19 of 2020, if you've seen, a lot of changes that have been, I have been at the forefront understanding the trade needs and trying to put it across in the law committee meeting as well as getting it done through the GST council. For example, if you see expedite the refunds that has been done and what kind of facilities that have been given for the people to operate from their homes, And a new section of 168A has been introduced to do any kind of emergency situation. Waiver of penalty has been done, waiver of reduction of the interest has been done. If you just recall, e-way bill which has been expired has been also given. If you see, lot of changes have been done in TCS, TDS. If you talk of the 2021 COVID, I mean, which has struck again as a second wave, there also similar measures have been introduced. In fact, we have gone 2 steps forward than what has been done. We have introduced amnesty scheme for the people who have not filed returns. We have facilitated to a large extent a COVID-related material. If you have seen, I mean, many of the COVID-related materials, the rates of duties have been reintroduced, I mean, reduced in 44 GST Council meeting. I mean, a lot of step has been taken to cater to the needs of people in facing the COVID situation, both on economic front as well as on the health front. If you see way forward, how exactly are we going today? I'm not making any official statement because I'm not supposed to make any such statement here. What I am seeing is only I'm just listing out what are the areas that are left over. I mean, it's up to the GST Council as well as the government of India and various state governments to choose which one to go. What are the things? I just brought out few items that probably require certain thing. One of the most thing that is talked about is the bringing 5 petroleum products into GST. GST Council will have to decide a date from which these items will be coming into GST. I will say about a certain important aspects that probably the trade as well as the governments will have to bear in mind. One is about the cooperative federalism, because the way GST Council has been working, most of the decisions have been anonymous decisions. I mean, everybody has agreed upon, excepting few. Excepting only one time we had that difficulty. As the days that are going to come, the unity of between union government as well as the state government is one of the very, very critical aspect that is going to bring us forth. And if you see rate rationalization, this is something our present revenue secretary has also announced, something that it will be considered. If we talk of blocking of, blocking of credit at certain things, that is also being talked of, especially on the real estate sector as well as on the restaurants. And avoiding inverted duty structure has been on the main agenda of the council. It has started with mobile phones, and one slide behind that. It has started with mobile phone, and it is going to one slide just behind that. You have skipped one slide. And they have started doing with mobile phone. Then some more also they will be doing. I mean, whatever the trade that has been asking and whatever be the required for the government, we have been doing it. I mean, the journey never stops. Whether it is on track or not, it is up to the time to decide. I am very sure in this journey that is going to continue. A lot of support is going to come from, just one more slide after this. Lot of support is going to come from the trade and industry, where just one more, one more. One more. Here it is. Yeah. If we come here, next slide, please. Appellate tribunal is something that is on the cards, that has been talked about. I understand the difficulties that people had to rush to the courts, and there is a lot of things that are being discussed at Advanced Ruling Authority, National Advanced Ruling Authority. There's also incentive schemes that are being talked of for B2C, where there could be possibly leakage. And there could be also much focus on the days, months and years to come on the GST practitioners. And looking at this, there's a lot of work to be done. And in this entire journey, it is the stakeholders and the government who have to work hand in hand. The government is coming forward 2 steps forward. And I'm very sure I'm very sure the trade and industry also will come forward and support. As you have seen, to realize the dream of 5 trillion, economy, and to realize the difficult times to come, the years of 2021 and 22 are going to be very, very crucial. And taking this opportunity, I would like to plead to the trade and industry to cooperate with the government, to work together. After all, government is also one of the stakeholders. Let us work together to make India as a proud nation. Let us work together in these difficult times, where the third wave is going to be there or not. I mean, we have to live together ultimately. If these years of 2021 and 22 are going to be very, very crucial, if we work together, both the government and the industry, I'm very sure India is going to realize the dream. India may become the economic superpower also, but
imagine if you miss this bus, I think it will be very difficult for us to come up. So I take this opportunity to plead on behalf of the Government of India for greater cooperation from the industry. I thank Shailendra, I thank the entire team of Tax India Online for giving me this opportunity. Thank you, sir. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you so much, Mr. S.K. Rahman, for that detailed and extensive presentation. Mr. N. Venkatraman, Additional Solicitor General of India, has been chairing this session, and at juncture, I would like to request him to please join in and share his special observations about this session, and with that, also conclude the TIOL Tax Congress. Mr. N. Venkatraman.
Am I audible and visible now?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. Thanks, Shailendra. Thanks, Sridhar. And hi, Pratik. And namaste to Rahman, sir. In fact, two very, very illuminating, though short, quite specific punch point speeches by both Pratik and Rahman, sir. I'll just add a few. I am the last speaker, as she says, and I hope I will last as a speaker at 1:45, all ready for lunch. So let me take the brief possible time to conclude. Having touched on, see, there are three verticals in GST which we should be very, very thorough about: transformation, transparency, and technology. The entire law can be bundled into these three verticals. And both the speakers touched about the three Ps. But what you actually need to know as representing industry or representing the as practitioners is what is actually the type of cases that is being heard by courts. I thought I'll spend my time on that leg because two important data given by Mr. Rahman and Pratik are quite assuring. From 60 lakh assessees, we have now transformed into 1.2 or 1.3 crore assessees. And from 130th country, we have improved ourselves as 61st country in trade and business. So this is, if somebody wants to know, has GST done something? I think these are two things which we can certainly showcase. Now coming to the interpretation and the judicial front, these are the types of cases which is being heard, because these are all in different stages. I don't want to be narrating the intricacies of the law because it's pending before the court, but you should know the issues. Supreme Court in Moti Minerals held that even though GST aims at subsuming the taxes into one whole, still Constitution empowers a charge of cess over and above GST. That has been sustained. And that's how we are able to impose 160% cess on tobacco products, which is a large chunk of revenue for Parliament. Now, while subsuming these taxes into one, a dozen taxes into one, we have kept a few deliberately outside the ken of subsumption. One is, as I said, the tobacco products, which is with the union, alcoholic liquor for human consumption, which is with the states, and of course, petroleum product is said to be subsumed. We are just finding out the auspicious day to do it because we are a federal. Why have we done? And naturally, stamp duties are still also with the state. So the three basic milking cows, petroleum products, alcohol for human consumption, and stamp duty is still outside the ken of GST. And that's how we are able to maintain a good federal balance. It's not that easy to run a nation of this size with multiplicity of opinions, multiplicity of governance, and still go by 99 out of 100%, a majority unanimous opinion in the GST Council. Now, the types of disputes that arise for considerations. When we argued for 4.5 days before the Supreme Court a week ago on the inverted structure, which Mr. Rahman was saying that we are planning to ensure that it doesn't happen. So a question arose: is it a time to integrate goods and services into one whole packet in terms of rate, in terms of uniformity? This was the questions that are all being debated about. So the jurisprudence that is evolving is when policy makers have their own choice, constraints, limitations, and necessities, how does court view policymakers' choice? What should be the kind of synergy which both should place together? It's a very, very interesting debate which has happened for 5 days, 4.5 days. To say that one view, which we have certainly expressed on the other government, is policymakers' choice should not be interfered with because it interferes with the basic structure doctrine. The limitations has to be understood only by a policymaker and not necessarily by courts through interpretation. So we'll have to wait for the judgment to come. This is one issue. The second interesting issue which is being battled again in the courts, in one of the high courts, is interestingly, petroleum is yet to be subsumed. Alcohol for human consumption and stamp duties are outside the can of GST. Whereas when it comes to tobacco products, it is subsumed into GST and it is also kept as a can in entry 84 list 1 as part of excise duty structure. So today tobacco products suffer a very small basic excise duty, a NCCD, a GST, and a compensation cess. So the interesting constitutional question that has come up for consideration is, when something is part of 246 capital A as GST pool, can you still impose excise duty on such a product? So this is a very, very important and an interesting constitutional debate which is happening in the courts. Lions argue for the other side, and we are going to do our reply on Monday before one of the high courts. So these are all the evolutionary conceptual points that is emerging. And of course, the third angle, which we may be debating after 4-5 weeks in the Honorable Supreme Court, is about we have talked about the concept of cooperative federalism in terms of 279 capital B. So one of the issues likely to come up for the consideration for the court is, what is the constitutional status of this GST Council? It has a constitutional status. It's not a legislature of a state or a parliament. It's not an executive of the state or the center. And it does recommendations which unions and states necessarily follow and translate into law or notifications. So this is a moment of trying to say this is a perfect cooperative federalism. So how do you designate this body in terms of jurisprudence? It has a constitutional status, no doubt about it. But how do you designate it? Is it a legislative body? Is it an executive body? Is it an administrative body? Or it's a constitutional body in which all these are rolled? India is not unfamiliar with all these terrains. If you see the regulators, the various regulatory laws, TROI, gas, insurance, SEBI, Competition Commission, you read any regulatory law, the roles are multifold. It will be advisory, it will be administrative, it will be quasi-judicial, it will be recommendatory. So there are multiple roles played. So this is again going to be very, very important issue that will come up for consideration, say 5-6 weeks from now before the court for its consideration. So courts at the moment are dealing with this new jurisprudence of GST law. That's the message. I thought, because it's an important tax conference and I should leave it with you. And it will slowly boil down to various other issues which both of them have said. We need to have the GST in place, GSTAT in place at some point of time. And the working of the advanced ruling authorities, in fact, Principal Commissioner is here, we've been talking also. So it's time that we have unified bodies of AAI, giving due representation for each state in that body. So that that representative will dealing the matter from that state can be a member, so that we avoid plurality or multiplicity of conflicting opinions. And the uniformity is achieved to the best extent possible at the quasi-judicial stage. This is one recommendation which we are certainly placing it for consideration. And two, on Tran 1, we have been talking to the government and we are trying to resolve it to the best of our abilities. And finally, a request is made when Pratik was saying we don't find a forum or any such thing. If you have got, instead of going on saying this is right, this is wrong, so you can't compare Indian GST with any other. For the simple reason, the size, the volume, the bandwidth. Where do you find 1.3 crore SSCs in 1 day? Anywhere in any part of the world under the GST system. So we have our own unique styles, and therefore unique limitations. So if there is something to contribute positively, please reach out to us, because government is interested to ensure good ideas get integrated. That's the message I thought I should leave it last in your mind. Pleasure to have addressed this audience. And thank you once again, Shailendra and Sridhar. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Mr. N. Venkatraman, Additional Solicitor General of India, first for sparing time to be a part of this TIOL Tax Congress, and then, of course, sharing your deep insights and suggestions for industries and everyone at large to follow. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And with that address, we officially conclude the TIOL Tax Congress. But before I move any further, I would like to point out to a special book counter that we have made at the back of the audience, if you could see at the back of the hall, where you can get hands on the book COVID-19 Genocide Without Parallel. And what's special is that if you get hands on it today, you can actually get the author, that's Mr. Shailendra Kumar, actually signed for you. So make sure you do that on your way out of the hall. So I'm sure it's been a great learning experience for all of you, listening to so many stalwarts from diverse fields sharing their expertise on matters of importance today. And we hope that this Congress has been as enriching experience for you as it has been for us. On that note, I would like to request Mr. R. Sridhar, TIOL Award Committee Coordinator, and Mr. Rishabh, Member Core Committee of TIOL Awards, to please present the vote of thanks.
Sorry for the morning small hiccup. I think it's time to apologize second time also. It's a real honor and opportunity for Rishabh and myself to present this vote of thanks. Perhaps this event was ordained by the will of TIOL Knowledge Foundation, delayed by the pandemic, creating havoc, but blessed by God to happen on this day. So it happened. Being a red letter day for TIOL, I must say a knowledge leader in dissemination in the areas of fiscal, economic, and other laws. We find this event a platform which will really herald the future. Firstly, we profusely thank Justice Vineet Saran, who could not make it today due to some family exigencies, but he gave us a big boost to our motivation to carry on with our great work. I mean, he really said so many good things when we met him 2-3 times, and he was very encouraging. We thank Honorable N.K. Singh Ji, Guest of Honor, the Chairman of the 15th Finance Commission, for sharing his international perspective and vast knowledge of ideas in the areas.
I take this opportunity to thank Mr. A.N. Jha, Mr. G.C. Srivastava, and Mr. Binay Kumar for joining us on the short notice and benefiting us with his insightful views. Next, we thank Mr. Ajit Kumar, the CBIC Chairman, and Shri J.B. Mohapatra, Chairman CBDT, and Member Customs, Mr. S.M. Bhatnagar, for sharing us the revenues perspective in an illuminating manner. We thank the entire member of the jury, the former CJI Justice R.C. Lahoti ji, Justice R.V. Ishwar, former Finance Secretary Shri Sumit Bose, Mr. Ashok K. Bhattacharya, Editorial Director, Business Tender, Dr. Girish Ahuja, Member Direct Tax Task Force, Ms. Praveen Mahajan, former Chairperson CBIC, Mr. M.C. Joshi, former Chairman CBDT, for having participated in the jury panel deliberation and having consented to participate in the function. Due to his prior commitments, I think retired Justice Shri Ishwar, Delhi High Court, could not participate in the proceeding. For making it live and enlightening session at TIOL Tax Congress, we extend our gratitude to Mr. Dharmakriti Joshi, Mr. Akhilesh Ranjan, Dr. Pascal Piston, Mr. N. Venkatraman, Mr. Prateek Jain, and Mr. S.K. Rahman.
We thank Sanjay Agarwal ji, Chartered Accountant of DSRV LLP, who audited the process and helped the jury panel with their independent views. Our sincere appreciation and warmth for the unconditional support of all the sponsors of both the awards and the Tax Congress who have supported us in this venture. Our sincere appreciation to Shutra, the event partner, Digital Hive, and third-party IT support teams who have assisted in this exercise. We must not forget the contribution of Mr. Sudhir Thomas for his creative guidance in this whole event, extending over nearly 12 months, lending his artistic touch to the event. Our deep recognition for the efforts put in by Mr. Shikhar and his entire IT team for having handled this vast exercise during the designing stage and post the designing stage. Our humble thanks to the staff of the TIOL core team, the other staff of the editorial teams at Mumbai, Hyderabad, and other locations who have ensured the success of this event. Our special thanks, I must say, to Mr. Gajendra first, secondly to Rishabh, my colleague, who's been a great support partner on IT concepts and other things from GST Street, the hotel authorities of Taj, the participants, the winners of TIOL Awards, and above all, the subscribers of TIOL who really hold this together. Participants of this event, both physically and digitally. We will endeavor to raise the bar next year and hope to pray that 2021 awards function will be held in a grand manner. And I must say, physically, I would like to make this physically, where interaction and exchange of ideas, and there will be no technology issues, and learning will be the hallmark. Wishing you all a safe, balanced 2021, bearing in mind that we must overcome the predicted, forecasted third wave with as minimal impact as possible. God bless India, the world at large, Vasudhaiva Kudumbam, and every citizen of India and TIOL at last. Please join us for lunch.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sridhar and Mr. Rishabh, for delivering the vote of thanks. Thank you all who joined us physically and virtually and contributed towards making this event a success. As Mr. Sridhar said, we'll be back very soon, hopefully with the pandemic completely behind us, with a much bigger, better and grander version of National Taxation Awards. The lunch is being served in the hall just next to this one. But before I let you go, I request all the winners of the awards, if you could just come closer to the stage for a group photograph. I repeat myself, all the winners are requested to stay back for a group photograph, please.